Chapter 258. Pang Xiao had lost a lot of weight, and the contours of his face had become deeper and more defined. His long eyebrows that reached his temples covered his pair of bright phoenix eyes. When he looked at Qin Yining, his gaze was so gentle that it was as if he could drown in it. His curved lips showed that he was in a good mood at the moment. Qin Yining's heart was beating fast, and his face was red. He looked away to avoid eye contact with Pang Xiao. He saw that Pang Xiao was wearing a patched shirt, and upon closer inspection, there seemed to be some dark blood stains on his abdomen. Qin Yining thought of the smell of blood that filled his nose when Pang Xiao hugged him just now. He hurriedly stroked Pang Xiao's abdomen, and sure enough, it was warm and sticky to the touch. "You're injured," Qin Yining exclaimed in a low voice. Pang Xiao lowered his head to look at his abdomen, and said with some annoyance, "It's nothing. It's just a small injury. Maybe it's because I moved a little too much just now that I'm bleeding." Qin Yining hurriedly pushed Pang Xiao to a nearby embroidered stool to sit down. He turned around and said to Bing Tang, "Quickly take a look at him." Although Bing Tang felt sorry for Prince Ning's death, she also understood that war depended on one's ability. On the battlefield, swords and knives had no eyes. Therefore, she nodded without hesitation and went to get the medical kit. Qin Yining looked around, lowered his eyes, and said, "It's not convenient here. Come with me." They definitely needed to light a lamp to check the injury, but if they lit a lamp here, the people outside would clearly see the shadows in the room. Qin Yining took Pang Xiao's hand and led him to the inner room. He pulled up the gauze curtain outside the step bed and led him to the inner room to sit on the edge of the bed. Her bed was made of carved red sandalwood and was divided into 2 rooms. The inner room had a large bed that was big enough for 2 people to roll around on. The outer room had a small table, a low cabinet, and a footrest. Both the inner and outer rooms were covered with a layer of gauze curtains that blocked out the light. When placed there, it was like a small independent room in the bedroom. As long as the outer curtains were drawn and the light was lit in the middle of the bed, there was no need to be afraid of being seen. Pang Xiao sat on the edge of the bed and looked around curiously. She looked at the light blue curtain embroidered with pear blossoms, the light green and light pink bedding, and the pillowcase. She seemed to smell the faint fragrance of Qin Yining, which was unique to young girls. Her heart softened. Then he looked at Qin Yining, who was wearing a snow-white silk robe and a long skirt, which made her look even more delicate and delicate. He couldn't help but feel pity for her. "You've lost a lot of weight." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Aren't you the same?" She put a silk lamp on the small table, took a match, and bent down to light it. The slightly open neckline revealed her delicate collarbone, and the angle of her head made her small face look even bigger. As she bent down, her soft long hair slid from her shoulders to the front. The warm light was on. Looking at Qin Yining, Pang Xiao felt that the fatigue and anxiety of this period disappeared. Qin Yining went back to get 2 more lamps and lit them up. The bed was very bright, and she covered the gauze curtains tightly. "Let Bing Tang take a look for you." Pang Xiao just looked at her in a daze. He was stunned for a moment before he reacted and smiled. "Then I'll take off my clothes." As he spoke, he looked at Qin Yining with shining eyes, as if he didn't want to miss any changes in her expression. He slowly unbuttoned his clothes. His actions were like a silent seduction, which made Qin Yining blush. She whispered, "You're not serious. Doesn't your wound hurt?" "It doesn't hurt. When I look at you, I forget all the pain." His eyes were still fixed on Qin Yining. Qin Yining finally gave in and turned her head away from him. If she didn't want to check on his injury, she would have gone out of the room. Pang Xiao knew that going too far was as bad as falling short, so he stopped teasing her. He took off his shirt and threw it aside, revealing his muscular arms and bandaged abdomen. He was tall and straight. Although he looked thin, he was a typical example of flesh without clothes. However, at this moment, Qin Yining had no time to appreciate the smooth lines of his shoulders, neck, and arms. As soon as she saw the red bandage on his abdomen, her heart clenched and her whole body turned cold. "How did you get hurt?" Her voice was trembling. Bing Tang had already started to unwrap the bandage. Pang Xiao let Bing Tang do it and smiled at Qin Yining comfortingly. "It's okay. I was cut by Ning Wang, but it's not a big deal. It's all better now. What about you? I heard that your injury was very serious. Plus, your family has been through a lot lately, so it's no wonder you lost so much weight. I really wanted to come and see you, but the two armies were at war, so I couldn't leave my post easily. I was also afraid that if I came here, I would be discovered and cause trouble for you. Pang Xiao sighed, swallowing back the part about Yu Qian's plan to make Qin Yining the empress. He laughed and said, "Fortunately, recently your emperor has been selling his official position, and the newly appointed commander-in-chief Li Mian is as timid as a mouse, not daring to accept the challenge. That's why I was able to blend in with the coolies carrying the gunny sack to enter the city to see you." Qin Yining listened to Pang Zhao's evasive words and said sadly, "I'm fine. What's important is you. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. You must be careful." "I know. Don't worry. The person who can kill me, Pang Zhishi, hasn't been born yet." Pang Xiao smiled gently at her. Qin Yining asked Bing Tang, "How's his injury?" Bing Tang was taking out a small knife from the medicine box. He frowned and sneered. "Wang Yi, if you don't take care of yourself, next time I'll make a hole in your stomach. Your wound is infected and you have a fever. How dare you run around and let your wound reopen again and again? Even if you want to die, don't let my daughter bear the sin." As a doctor, he was most angry with patients who didn't take their own bodies seriously. Pang Zhao's symptoms were the same as Ning Wang's. They were both knife wounds, blood loss, and infection. The difference was that Ning Wang's injury was more serious and he was older. Pang Xiao only had this one wound, and he was young and strong. Bing Tang's mood was particularly heavy when he saw this kind of injury. He didn't hold back with his words. Pang Xiao was a little embarrassed after being scolded. "I just wanted to see your daughter. If I didn't come, I would get lovesick again." Bing Tang snorted. "If you don't want to die young and let my daughter become a widow early, I advise you to listen to me and take care of yourself. My daughter doesn't want to be an empress and doesn't want glory and wealth. Do you want to be sad for the future?" Pang Xiao touched his nose and looked at Qin Yining apologetically. "I've made things difficult for you these days, haven't I? It's my incompetence to let you be caught in the middle." Qin Yining shook his head with tears in his eyes. "What are you saying? You didn't lie to me. When I promised you, I knew this would happen. It's not your fault." She watched as Bing Tang deftly treated Pang Zhao's wound. He scraped away the rotten flesh, disinfected it with alcohol, stitched it up, applied medicine, and bandaged it. After this series of actions, she felt pain for him just by watching. Even her hands and feet were cold. However, Pang Xiao didn't even frown. He still looked at her with such a warm gaze, as if he cherished every opportunity to see her. Qin Yining's heart ached, but there was nothing he could do for him. He couldn't help but cry. Chapter 259. Bing Tang was also a little annoyed at himself for being too rash and making Qin Yining sad. He hurriedly said, "Miss, don't worry. This injury is not fatal." This servant spoke so harshly only to make Wang Yi more alert. "I know." Qin Yining wiped his tears with his sleeve and forced a smile. "Quickly treat him. I'll go ask Ji Yin to prepare some supper." Qin Yining was about to leave. "Don't go. I'm not hungry." Pang Xiao finally managed to enter the city to see her. How could he bear to let her out of his sight? "Nonsense. Since you sneaked into the city and had to avoid the spies around my house to see me, you definitely won't have a chance to eat properly. Bing Tang said that you still have a fever. You can't be careless about your health." Qin Yining said this and couldn't help but blush as he added, "I'll be back immediately." After saying that, he turned around and lifted the curtain to go out. Pang Xiao recalled Qin Yining's teary and blushing face. He couldn't help but giggle foolishly for a while. Then he said to Bing Tang, "Don't say this in front of your miss in the future. Otherwise, you'll make her sad." Bing Tang snorted, "My miss is very smart. Do you think that just because she doesn't speak much, she doesn't understand anything? She just doesn't say anything. If you really want my missus good, then please take care of yourself. Since you've already chased my miss across the country, then don't make her sad. My miss's health isn't good either." Pang Xiao didn't know this, but sometimes he couldn't help it when he was in this position. "How's her injury?" "She lost too much blood and hurt her foundation. She needs to recuperate for a period of time. With the identity of my miss, there will always be endless troubles to deal with. She has too many worries. What kind of person can live a long life while being depressed all day long? Pang Xiao frowned worriedly. Bing Tang continued, let's not talk about the distant past. Last month, there was no food in the city, and the commoners somehow found out that the retired emperor had hidden the money. Tens of thousands of people rushed to the Xuanzu temple to ask our miss what had happened. Just thinking about that scene is frightening. Miss is not an official of the imperial court. You just have an empty title. His Majesty failed to marry Miss and ordered her to cultivate in anger. This gave the common people a reason to make things difficult for Mississippi. If Miss had said anything wrong that day, I'm afraid you would have been cursed and trampled by the people. Then you would have given the emperor an idea, and the empress would have made things difficult for you. For example, this kind of thing is very common. Even if Miss is a female Zhuge Liang, your heart would still be tired. At this point, Bing Tang rolled her eyes at Pang Xiao and carefully bandaged his wound. Then she said, our girl has a hard life, and you don't let her be at ease. Bing Tang was always on Qin Yining's side, so her words were naturally a little exaggerated. However, it was not far from the truth. How could Pang Xiao not know about Qin Yining's hardships? He frowned and did not say anything. Bing Tang tidied up his medical box, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Pang Xiao. This servant will go and boil the medicine. Then she left. She gave him a strong dose of medicine. She hoped that Pang Xiao would think more about Qin Yining in the future. At this moment, Qin Yining and Ji Yun came in with freshly cooked brown sugar millet porridge. Together with the soup dumplings and a few side dishes, they placed it on the small table. Ji Yun moved a square table over and placed it on the bed. Then, she bowed and left. She closed the two curtains around the bed and went outside to guard it. Qin Yining passed a pair of chopsticks to Pang Xiao and sat beside him with a fan. She first draped her light green jacket over Pang Xiao's shoulders and gently fanned him while watching him wolf down the food. I've asked Bing Tang. You must go back and recuperate well. Don't fight again unless you have no other choice. If you fall ill, it will affect your whole life. Who will you cry to when you're not feeling well at your age? Of course I'll cry to you. Pang Xiao ate the soup dumplings quickly and elegantly. Qin Yining couldn't help but smile and shake her head. I can listen to you cry, but I can't suffer for you. So you must take good care of yourself. Are you promising me a lifetime? Pang Xiao stopped eating and looked at Qin Yining with burning eyes. Qin Yining recalled their conversation just now and realized what she meant. She blushed and hit him with the fan. Hurry up and eat. You'll have good medicine after you finish eating. Fortunately, my body hasn't fully recovered and I have to take medicine all day. Brewing medicine won't attract attention. You can stay here after you take the medicine later. Pang Xiao laughed and said insincerely, I can leave after I see you. It's so dangerous outside. You're injured. How can I let you go out without worry? Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him. You're still pretending to be innocent. Do you want me to say that? Will you refuse to stay? Of course not. Pang Xiao laughed. I just want to hear more from you. You're so sly. Qin Yining also laughed. After Pang Xiao had a full meal, Qin Yining went to get him a cup of tea to rinse his mouth and a wet handkerchief to wipe his face. Pang Xiao sat on the bed and watched as she busied herself like a little wife for him. His heart was already filled with happiness and longing. Sister E, don't be busy. Let's talk. Pang Xiao took her hand and let her sit on his lap. Qin Yining twisted uncomfortably, but his arm wrapped around her waist like an iron hoop. She couldn't break free and could only sit for a while. She said unwillingly, What are you doing? This is such a big bed. Is there no place for me to sit on? Let go of me. Don't move. Pang Xiao's muscles were tense. He didn't want to be overly emotional because of the beauty in his arms. He said, I just miss you. Even if I stay here tonight, I will find a chance to leave the city tomorrow. We don't spend much time together. Don't hide from me. Thinking that he was leaving tomorrow, Qin Yining was reluctant to part with him. She didn't refuse and obediently leaned on his shoulder. Pang Xiao held her with one hand and looked down at her black hair leaning on his shoulder. He couldn't help but raise his other hand and gently caress her cheek. Don't worry. I will end this war as soon as possible. The sooner it ends, the less suffering we will suffer. The sooner the people can live a peaceful life. Qin Yining lived in the city and didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Naturally, she didn't know what was happening outside. Pang Xiao didn't have the heart to tell her. However, in the midst of war, even if military discipline was emphasized, there were still many people who died because of accidental injuries or various reasons. Qin Yining knew that she couldn't ask him about military matters. After all, they were still on opposite sides. If he said too much and something went wrong, it would definitely cause unnecessary suspicion and conflict between them. Therefore, she only said, everything will go according to destiny. As long as you are safe, you can do whatever you want. Pang Xiao was moved. He kissed the top of her head and said, I know. Miss, the medicine is here. Ji Yun's voice came from outside. Qin Yining's face turned red. She hurriedly broke free from his arm and got up to get the medicine. At this moment, she heard the Sun Clan's voice outside. Bing Tang is brewing medicine? Is Sister Yi feeling better? Chapter 260. Qin Yining put down the bowl of medicine and hurriedly pulled Pang Xiao's hand. She was like an ant on a hot pan, trying to find a place to hide him. Pang Xiao was amused by her appearance. He had seen her calm and gentle side when she was steady and resourceful. He already felt that she was very lovable. He didn't expect her to be even cuter when she was flustered. Qin Yining glared at him. You're still laughing. Look at the situation now. Why don't you hide in the cupboard? No, you can't get in with your size. You'd better hide in the washroom. As she said this, she pushed him into the washroom. She didn't forget to whisper, you must not make a sound. If my mother finds out, it won't be fun if she makes a fuss. Pang Xiao saw how nervous she was and chuckled as he walked. Don't we look like a pair of wild lovebirds who were caught having a private meeting? What are you talking about? Look at how dignified you are. Why are you talking about such things? Qin Yining hid him behind the door of the washroom. I told you to hide for your own good. I know. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and pecked her on the lips. Qin Yining's face flushed red. She wanted to push him away, but she was afraid that he would burst his wound. She didn't dare to struggle too much and could only pinch his arm. Stop fooling around. I can hear my mother's footsteps going upstairs. It doesn't hurt at all. Pang Xiao laughed happily and stole a kiss on her forehead. Only then did he let her go with satisfaction. Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him and patted her hot cheeks. She adjusted her clothes and adjusted her mood as she went out. She couldn't let the Sun Clan find out about Pang Xiao. This was not just a matter of reputation, but also involved the relationship between the two countries. She could see war and love as two things, but others might not. If Pang Xiao, who was the commander-in-chief of the army, was caught, it would be a great event for Diane. She couldn't guarantee that her family wouldn't hand him over. Since he dared to take the risk to see her, she couldn't let him be in danger because of her. By the time they reached the door, Qin Yining had already adjusted his emotions. The Sun Clan had also gone upstairs under the care of Mother Jean and Bing Tang. Mother, why are you here at this time? Qin Yining smiled and held the Sun Clan's arm. The two of them sat down in the outer room. I'm bored, so I came to talk to you. The Sun Clan member looked at Qin Yining's face. Have you not recovered yet? I see that Bing Tang is brewing medicine again. It's okay. It's a tonic. Qin Yining smiled and looked at Bing Tang. Bing Tang cooperated and explained, Madam, there's no need to worry. As long as Mrs. Body is nourished well, she will soon be as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. The Sun Clan member nodded in relief and said, Since the medicine is ready, you should eat it. As she spoke, she thoughtfully handed the bowl of medicine that was meant for Pang Xiao to Qin Yining. Pang Xiao, who was in the cleaning room, was a little worried. Ji Yun and Bing Tang looked at each other. Ji Yun and Pang Xiao were the same. They were nervous because they didn't know if Qin Yining would be harmful to her body after taking the medicine. Bing Tang, on the other hand, found it funny. Although Qin Yining was usually very straightforward when taking medicine and didn't even frown, she knew that Qin Yining was actually very afraid of bitterness. She had once asked her if she could add some licorice to the medicine. The two servant girls stared at Qin Yining, waiting to see how she would respond. Qin Yining calmly placed the bowl on the table and said, "I'll eat it later. This medicine is too hot. Also, I just took another medicine." Bing Tang said that these two medicines can't be taken so close together. Ji Yun sighed in relief and secretly praised Qin Yining's quick-wittedness. Bing Tang lowered her head and began to hold back her laughter. Qin Yining pretended not to see the expressions of the two servant girls. She smiled and asked the Sun Clan member, "Mother is usually asleep at this time. Are you worried about Father today?" "Yes." The Sun Clan member nodded gloomily. After Duke and Guogong, Li Mian took over as the Grand Marshal of the Armed Forces, he began to avoid battle. The Tiger Army was incomparably valiant, and Pang Xiao was good at strategizing. Compared to him, Duke and Guogong was much less courageous than Prince Ning. In the past month, he had suffered countless losses. More than 30,000 of the 350,000 soldiers defending the city had been whittled down by the 100,000 soldiers of the Tiger Army. Even if Yu Qi Yin wasn't good at scheming, he could see that this couldn't go on. Therefore, he appointed Qin Huaiyuan as his military advisor yesterday and went to the outer city to assist Duke and Guogong, Li Mian, in battle. After Qin Huaiyuan set out, Chao Yuqing quietly took the bundle and chased after him. When Qin Manor was in trouble, Silver Mask spies came to protect it. When Qin Manor turned the tables, Chao Yuqing also led the Silver Mask spies to help. Now, the people outside didn't know, but the Qin family members all knew that this delicate beauty was actually the leader of the Silver Mask spies under the retired emperor. The Sun Clan was very happy that Qin Huaiyuan had an expert like Chao Yuqing by his side to protect him. However, when they thought about how Chao Yuqing was young, beautiful, and had outstanding martial arts skills. Moreover, she was sincere to Qin Huaiyuan. It was hard to say whether she wouldn't go through trials and tribulations with him on the battlefield. This made the Sun Clan's heart sour and bitter, so much so that they couldn't sleep. However, she wouldn't tell her daughter about such an embarrassing matter. When Qin Yining saw the Sun Clan's expression change in an instant, he had already guessed most of what had happened. However, as a junior, she couldn't interfere in the matters between her parents. Her father wasn't someone who didn't take concubines. Now that the Chao family had been destroyed and the retired emperor had been put under house arrest by the Yu Qi Yin because of the silver, Chao Yuqing had become a rootless duckweed. It was true that she had the Silver Mask spies in her hands, but now she wholeheartedly belonged to Qin Huaiyuan. And the retired emperor didn't seem to be prepared to take back his Silver Mask spies. Her father was in the prime of his life. He was brave, resourceful, and handsome. Chao Yuqing had been deeply in love with her father for many years. It could be seen that she treated her father wholeheartedly. In the past, she was restrained by the retired emperor, but now that there were no more worries, it wasn't unacceptable for her to become soft. However, no matter how reasonable this matter was, it was still painful for the official wife. She wanted to persuade her mother, but since the Sun Clan didn't say anything, she didn't want to make them sad. She could only say, "Mother, don't worry. I heard that these 2 days, Dukan has begun to avoid the war. Father naturally isn't in any danger. Even if there is a war, Father doesn't have to go to the front lines. You can rest assured." The Sun Clan nodded. She forced a smile and chatted with Qin Yining for a while. However, she lost interest in talking after a while and left with Mother Jean. Qin Yining sent the Sun Clan downstairs. When he returned to his room, his mood was a bit heavy. When he reached the door, he remembered that Pang Xiao was still in the room. He turned around and said to Ji Yun and Bing Tang, "You two go rest. You don't need to sleep tonight." Bing Tang raised his eyebrows and smiled at Qin Yining. That smile was very teasing, causing Qin Yining's face to turn red. Ji Yun also held back her laughter, but her actions were very loyal to her master. She bowed and pulled Bing Tang away. When Qin Yining pushed open the door, he was actually a bit nervous. Chapter 261. Qin Yining prepared herself mentally. She gritted her teeth and pushed the door open. Before she could enter the room, a large hand wrapped around her and held her tightly in his arms. The door closed behind her with a creak, and the world spun around her. Her back was against the cold wall, and a hot body pressed against her. Before she could speak, her lips were fiercely sealed. Pang Zhao's mouth tasted slightly bitter, but more than that, there was a scorching heat that could burn her. Qin Yining felt as though she was on fire. She felt as though all the bones in her body had been pulled out. If it weren't for Pang Zhao's arms supporting her, she would have collapsed. The lights had already been blown out, so the room was dark. Only the sounds of kissing and heavy breathing could be heard. One of Pang Zhao's hands pressed against the back of her head to prevent her from shrinking away, while the other hand was stroking her slender back. They didn't separate until both of them felt as though they couldn't breathe. She wrapped her arms around his neck and panted as she looked at the handsome face in front of her. She said in a low voice, "Pang Zhishi." It was the first time she had called him by his courtesy name in such a tone. Two clusters of fire ignited in Pang Zhao's eyes. He murmured in her ear. Qin Yining buried her face in his neck and whispered, "It would be great if you didn't have to go back." Pang Zhao's heart felt as though it had been fiercely kneaded. The romantic feelings he had just now were completely shattered, and all that was left was pity and guilt for her. Pang Zhao held her tightly in his arms and kissed her forehead sincerely. "Everything will be fine. There will be a day when we can be together." Qin Yining nodded, but she still felt sad when she thought of Qin Huaiyuan and the Sun Clan, as well as Yu Qiyin and Li Yinyan. However, she was an extremely rational person. She wouldn't ask for anything easily. Pang Zhao was sensitive enough to feel that she was in low spirits. He thought for a moment and asked, "Are you worried about your father?" Qin Yining nodded in agreement. Pang Zhao said, "It is indeed dangerous when the battlefield is in chaos. I will arrange for the Four Jinghu Way to protect father-in-law. Don't worry, as long as I can control the situation, I will not let anything happen to father-in-law." Qin Yining nodded obediently. Pang Zhao could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw that she was still depressed. She recalled that before the Sun Clan came, she was still fine, but after chatting with the Sun Clan for a while, she became sad. Pang Zhao was a very smart person, and he knew the things around these important people like the back of his hand. Thinking that Qin Huaiyuan was accompanied by an extremely beautiful woman in the outer city military camp, he guessed a few things. Pang Zhao said tentatively, "If you marry me, I promise that I won't take any concubines, sleep with maids, or drink with prostitutes. I will only have you, okay?" Qin Yining was startled by his sudden promise. She looked up at him in surprise. "You are really strange. Why did you suddenly say this?" Pang Zhao saw her expression and knew that he guessed right. This silly girl was unhappy because of the matter between Qin Huaiyuan and the Sun Clan. He pinched her white cheeks in amusement. "Don't you like it?" Qin Yining blushed and stared at him again. She couldn't hide the joy in her watery eyes. She said insincerely, "That's true, but isn't it normal for you men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Even if you don't bring them home, you can still have them when you socialize and play with them." Pang Zhao laughed when he heard that. "I didn't expect that you have already thought about our future." Qin Yining realized what she had said. She blushed and turned to walk into the room. Pang Zhao chased after her and said with a smile, "I am very happy that you think this way. You have suffered so much for me. If I don't treat you well, wouldn't I be too inhumane? What's more, to you I'm like, once you've crossed the vast ocean, you can't be considered water. Apart from Mount Wu, you can't be a cloud." Pang Zhao followed her footsteps and sat down on the bed with her. Qin Yining said, "You only know how to coax people with sweet words." "I've never been good at coaxing people," Pang Zhao said seriously. "A real man never goes back on his word." His seriousness made Qin Yining a little uncomfortable. She got up and went to the closet to get a pillow and a thin blanket, saying, "Get some rest. You sleep here. I will go outside." Pang Zhao saw that she was blushing and trying to change the topic. He smiled and did not pursue the matter. He took the pillow and put it on the bed, saying, "It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. You don't have to remember what I said. You just have to see what I will do in the future." As he spoke, he pressed Qin Yining down on the bed and said, "You sleep on the bed, and I will sleep on the footrest. This way we can talk. You still have a fever. How can I let you sleep on the footrest? Do you think I enjoyed life in the army? I slept in straw huts and horse pens. It was good enough to sleep on a footrest. Pang Xiao smiled as he took a mattress and laid it on the footrest outside the bed. He placed a pillow on one side and lay down straight. He could not help but let out a sigh of comfort. You have been tired all day. It is more comfortable to lie down. Qin Yining sat on the edge of the bed. She could not help but feel sorry for him when she saw how he curled up his legs and did not dare to turn over. Why don't you get on the bed? Pang Zhao's eyes widened when he heard this. He slowly propped himself up and looked at her. Qin Yining's face was hot, but she kept a straight face and said, "Don't think too much. What I mean is that this bed is so big. We can even put a small table in the middle. You can sleep on the outside. If someone comes, it will be easy for you to hide. Although it is summer now, there is still wind on the ground. You are injured and have a fever. Do you want to get worse by sleeping on the ground?" Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Then I'll accept your offer." Qin Yining glared at him. She took off her shoes and got on the bed. She moved the pillow and mattress to the inside and placed the small table in the middle. Pang Xiao took the pillow and placed it on the outside. He placed the mattress under his feet as well. Only then did he put down the gauze curtains on the inside and outside of the bed. He then placed their shoes side by side. He lowered his head and looked at her beautiful and exquisite soft-soled embroidered shoes next to his black boots. His heart was filled with sweetness. Pang Xiao blew out the light and slowly lay down. The light and delicate fragrance on the mattress was unique to Qin Yining. There seemed to be the fragrance of jasmine in her hair on the pillow. Pang Xiao slowly turned over and buried his face in the thin blanket. He took a deep breath and couldn't help but laugh. People say that daughters are made of water, but my baby is made of flowers. Just sleeping next to you makes my nose fill with fragrance. Qin Yining was lying on her side with her back to him. Although there was a small table in the middle, his voice seemed to be right next to her ear. She closed her eyes tightly and didn't know how to answer him. Pang Xiao didn't wait for her to answer. He smiled and said, "I will remember today. This is the first time we sleep together." Qin Yining frowned and thought to herself, "This is too awkward." A large hand fell on her head. Pang Xiao gently scratched her scalp. A soft and numb feeling instantly spread throughout her body. He gently pinched her earlobe lovingly and said softly, "Baby, sweet dreams." Qin Yining closed her eyes. Although her face was red and her heart was beating fast, she was extremely happy. She thought that she would have insomnia, but this night, she slept more peacefully than ever. Even the nightmares that had troubled her for a long time didn't disturb her. When she woke up, the spot beside her was empty. Qin Yining woke up with a start. Did he leave? Chapter 262. Mississippi, Bing Tang carried a tray and placed it on the square table in the outer room. Then, she went into the inner room, pulled up the curtains, and hung them on the crabapple flower hooks. Qin Yining asked, "What time is it now?" "Miss, it's already early morning." "I actually slept for so long?" "That's right. Miss hasn't slept so deeply in a long time." Wang Yi even said that he didn't want this servant to wake you up and let you sleep until you woke up naturally. Bing Tang giggled as she put on a small jacket for her. Then, she gently pushed the long hair that was pressed under the jacket to the outside. "Miss, did Wang Yi do anything to you last night, bad girl?" Qin Yining blushed as she glared at Bing Tang. Bing Tang laughed even more happily. When Ji Yun and Xiao Lu heard Qin Yining get up, they also came in to help her wash up and comb her hair. Although they didn't ask directly like Bing Tang, their expressions were somewhat mocking. Qin Yining calmly pretended that she didn't see anything. She picked up a pair of pearl lilac glasses from the jewelry box and put them on. Then, she asked in a low voice, "Where's little Wang Yi?" Bing Tang said in a low voice, "Wang Yi woke up before the sun rose." After eating breakfast and taking medicine, this servant changed the bandages for Wang Yi. Wang Yi saw that you were sleeping deeply, so he didn't wake you up. He said that he had to arrange for the 4 Jinghu Wei and went out through the back window. Qin Yining nodded. She knew that he was going to arrange for the imperial bodyguards for her father. Although Pang Xiao was from Great Zhou, and he had arranged his personal guards to protect the military advisor of Yin dynasty in the middle of a war, which would definitely cause a backlash from his subordinates. Qin Yining believed that Pang Xiao would be able to handle it well. As usual, Qin Yining, together with 8th Miss and Qin Huaining, went to pay respects to the old madam. They also chatted with the members of the Sun Clan for a while before returning to the master's study. She did not go out the entire day and waited in the master's study. Who knew that Pang Xiao did not come back even when the sky turned dark? Instead, Mu Jinghu came. Fox was just about to come back, but there was an emergency ahead. He took Huzi and left in a hurry. Let me apologize to you. I'll visit you again when I have the chance. Mu Jinghu calmly observed Qin Yining's expression. As if he was afraid that she would be angry with Pang Xiao, he hurriedly explained himself. Don't blame him. He had no choice. He was bullied badly by their emperor. It's not easy to come and see you. He took the risk to come here. Not only does he have to be watched by the Dayan, there are also many spies in the Zhou dynasty who are watching his movements. This time, it seems that the people in the Zhou discovered that he left his post without permission and are suspected of colluding with the enemy. When Mu Jinghu said this, he was a little worried himself. He continued, I think that the imperial court in Zhou is not much better. They attack each other and do not care about the safety of the country. They are very good at framing capable officials. How could Qin Yining not know that Pang Xiao was in a difficult position? She was already very touched that he took the risk to come here. How could she blame him for this? However, after hearing Mu Jinghu's words and knowing that Pang Xiao's situation in the Zhou dynasty was so awkward, she became even more worried. Young Master Mu, can you tell me about his situation in Zhou? Mu Jinghu was afraid that Fox's sudden departure would anger Qin Yining and delay his search for a wife. Therefore, when he heard Qin Yining's question, he was naturally willing to take the opportunity to tell Qin Yining about Fox's difficulties. Mu Jinghu told him what he knew. When you were in Dayan, you saw how he led his troops and rampaged around. You thought that he had elite soldiers under his command, prestige in the army, and fame outside, and that he was indeed very impressive. However, you did not know that he was actually suppressed by their emperor. Back then, their emperor Li Qitian, Marquis North pacifying Jiziyu, and Fox became sworn brothers. You know about this, right? Qin Yining nodded. This matter is known to the whole world. But you definitely don't know why my martial uncle gave the three of them the order. It happened to be a chaotic time. The demon Fox came to the mortal world to cause chaos and destroy the destiny of the previous dynasty. The three malefic stars, Tan Lang, Qi Sha, and Pejun, assisted the Emperor Star of Ziwei to reach the top and created a world of peace. This Tan Lang landed in the northern grasslands. As for Pejun, Qi Sha, and the Emperor Star of Ziwei, they should be with Li Qitian, Jiziyu, and Fox. You said that your martial uncle gave them the order? You are Tian Jizi's martial nephew? Qin Yining was very surprised. Mu Jinghu covered his mouth. His face was blank, and he looked as if he had swallowed a raw egg. He had let it slip. For the sake of Fox's wife, he had even revealed his own identity. Seeing his expression, Qin Yining immediately said in an extremely understanding manner, Young Master Mu, don't worry. Since you're being honest with me, I will definitely not reveal your identity. Only you and I will know what young Master Mu said today. Mu Jinghu looked at Qin Yining's sincere eyes and nodded slowly. He said, All right, then I will believe you. Anyway, you won't know that my martial uncle and I are actually... He stopped abruptly. Mu Jinghu hit his head. In his excitement, he almost blurted out, My martial uncle and I are actually master and disciple. Mu Jinghu awkwardly changed the topic. He said, After my martial uncle gave them the order, they thought that they would be able to achieve meteoric success. However, when Li Qitian ascended the throne, my martial uncle hurriedly left. Can you guess why? Qin Yining's brain was already spinning rapidly. His expression immediately became serious. He lowered his voice and said, Could it be that Pang Zhishi is the Emperor Star of Ziwei? Mu Jinghu said in surprise, How did you think of that? How are you so smart? He was as cunning as a fox. Qin Yining knew that he could not speak half-heartedly when dealing with the somewhat slow-witted young Master Mu. He had to be blunt, since he had already revealed that he was Tian Jizi's martial nephew. He could not hide anything either. This is what young Master Mu said just now. Young Master Mu said that Jishi's situation in Dezhou was difficult, and you also mentioned the Tian Jizi's order. Then, the reason why Emperor Zhou wanted to make things difficult for Jishi was one of the reasons. In addition, young Master Mu mentioned the order of the 3 stars, Pejuan, Qisha, and Ziwei. The answer is self-evident. I have always heard that Li Qitian is cautious and suspicious. He is calm and thinks a lot. Why would an emperor develop a suspicious personality? There is only one reason, and that is because he has a guilty conscience. Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and said, he did not obtain the throne properly. Naturally, he would be worried day and night that someone would replace him. It seems like everyone wants to scheme against him. Mu Jinghu gave him a thumbs up in admiration. That's why they say that people of the same family will not enter the same house. You and the fox are both equally smart. It is indeed so. When my martial uncle found out that the real Emperor Star of Ziwei did not ascend the throne, he fled. Perhaps you knew all this before, or perhaps you did not. However, what you should know is that after the Pejuan Star ascended the throne, he was naturally afraid of the Emperor Star of Ziwei's retaliation. Chapter 263. Qin Yining naturally felt honored that Pang Xiao was being praised like this. However, apart from being happy, she was more worried about him. In the past, I had guessed that Pang Zhishi's life might not be good on the surface. Qin Yining stood up and paced back and forth worriedly. He was the vanguard of the attack on Beiji. In order to take revenge, he cruelly killed some Beiji officials. I originally thought that the Beiji officials who surrendered to Dezhou must be on the opposite side of Pang Zhishi. In addition, he has high prestige in the army, so the Zhou emperor must be wary of him. However, the consequences of these 2 factors are unimaginable. If what you said is true, the Zhou emperor will definitely not allow him to exist in this world. Qin Yining frowned and slowly stopped walking. She gripped the armrest of her chair so tightly that her knuckles gradually turned white. After hearing her analysis, Mu Jinghu also felt that Pang Zhao's situation was indeed dangerous. He was so shocked that his face turned pale. Based on what you said, won't he be in danger when he goes back this time? Qin Yining shook her head and said, I'm afraid that these people's attacks on him are just adding fuel to the fire. The Zhou emperor won't touch him for the time being. After all, they still need him to take down Dian. The Tiger Army is now the main force of the army. It's a big taboo to change the commander-in-chief at the last minute. He'll be fine in the short term. Mu Jinghu heard this and sighed deeply. Fortunately, that's the case. On second thought, he only said this to let Qin Yining know that Pang Xiao was in a difficult position outside. He didn't expect her to know more than he did. He was also involved. Mu Jinghu scratched his head and said, since you know everything, that's good. I'll take my leave first. I still have to thank you. Mu Jinghu felt strange and asked, thank me for what? Thank you for your concern for Pang Zhishi. It's Pang Zhishi's blessing to have a close friend like you. Mu Jinghu blushed at her compliment. He did not know how to respond to such a straightforward compliment. So he coughed and said, nothing, I'll take my leave first. Qin Yining responded with a smile to a person who was not good with words, but was extremely honest. He politely walked out the door to see him off. Qin Yining frowned as he watched him walk away. He turned around and went up to the attic. Last night, he was by her side. Although they were separated by a small table, the 2 of them slept on the same bed. They could hear each other's breathing. Even when she was asleep, she could feel his strong presence. But they had only been together for such a short time, and he had to go back. Moreover, he had to face the accusations of colluding with the enemy. Even if she could analyze that Emperor Zhou would not touch him for the time being, she still felt bad for him. Qin Yining's mind was full of worry. That night, he could not sleep again. He only managed to fall asleep when the sky gradually brightened. However, after sleeping for an hour, he got up and fainted again. Not to mention the Sun Clan. Even the Dowager Duchess, who was old and dim-sighted, could see that Qin Yining was haggard. She was worried that her old illness would relapse, so she hurried her to rest. While Qin Yining was catching up on sleep, Pang Xiao and Huzi had already returned to Xihua City. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows in front of him when he saw Zhao Yueshui, who looked like a white steamed bun. He said, "Eunuch Zhao's greeting gift is really special. You immediately put a big accusation on my head. Colluding with the enemy? Betraying the country? Eunuch Zhao, is this the crime that you have decided on this king?" Zhao Yueshui was specially sent by Emperor Zhou to supervise the army. He was in charge of observing Pang Zhao's movements at the front line. He had the authority to directly report to Emperor Zhou about the situation at the front line. Emperor Zhou valued Zhao Yueshui. In addition, he and Eunuch Li Guanwen, who was in charge of the ceremony directorate, were from the same hometown and were also father and son. Before he left, Zhao Yueshui's godfather, Eunuch Li, had privately warned him a lot. He also heard some rumors, so he had some contempt for Pang Xiao in his heart. Moreover, no matter what he did, his godfather would protect him in the capital. Who would dare to be disrespectful to the army supervisor? Zhao Yueshui smiled proudly. Wang Yi really knows how to joke. How can we have the authority to convict Wang Yi? However, as the commander-in-chief, Wang Yi left his post without permission. By doing this, are you worthy of the emperor's trust in you? Are you worthy of the emperor's great kindness? As he spoke, he cupped his hands towards the north and arrogantly raised his chin to stare at Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao playfully took a pillow and leaned it against his back. He sat comfortably on the round-back chair, his straight legs and black silk pants on the table. He leisurely said, "The enemy's new commander-in-chief avoids fighting for 30 days in a month. This king is bored to death. Can't he go and explore the terrain? If the enemy doesn't fight, Wang Yi will think of ways to make them fight. Have you thought about how much food the Tiger Army spends in a day while you're wandering around like this? The emperor trusts you and gives you money and food. Is this how you repay him?" Zhao Yueshui's voice was very tough. His black eyes were like small black beans embedded in white steamed buns. "I have to report Wang Ye's actions to the emperor." "TSK, TSK. Pang Xiao played with the horsewhip in his hand. "How interesting. Zhao Yueshui, have you forgotten where you are?" Pang Xiao's voice was very languid. His tone was amiable, as if he was talking about the weather. But Zhao Yueshui felt his body tighten. He put on a strong front and said, "Wang Yi, don't forget whose territory this world is. How dare you?" Huzi had long disliked this fat steamed bun. He kicked Zhao Yueshui several steps back and fell to the ground. "How dare you be presumptuous in front of our Wang Yi? Pang Zhishi, you're the one who's bold. You actually dare to beat me." "Beat?" Pang Xiao chuckled. He lazily supported his forehead with one hand and narrowed his eyes slightly. "List out Eunuch Zhao's crimes of selling information at a high price, embezzling military provisions, and colluding with the local gentry. He colluded with the enemy and committed treason. This king's bodyguard caught him in the act and still dared to lie through his teeth. Report all of this to the emperor. As the commander-in-chief of the army, this king can't tolerate such a disaster by his side, so he beheaded him on the spot. Then draft a memorial for this king to apologize to the emperor. However, this is an urgent matter. We can't tolerate the existence of a spy in front of the army." At this point, Pang Xiao closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Huzi responded with a yes. His eyes lit up as he grabbed Zhao Yueshui by the collar and walked out. Zhao Yueshui was so scared that his face turned pale. He wet his pants on the spot. "You can't do this. You're slandering me." "Slandering you? Not only did you sell military information at a high price, but you also dare to put the blame on Wang Yi. I think you're clearly benefiting from an outsider. You want to get rid of Wang Yi and make the emperor lose a loyal official." Huzi had been by Pang Zhao's side for a long time and was very eloquent. He threw Zhao Yueshui to the open space in the barracks and made his evil deeds public. The soldiers of the Tiger Army had long been displeased with a eunuch ordering them around in the barracks. Moreover, Zhao Yueshui was also very annoying. Now that they heard Huzi say that he dared to slander Pang Xiao, as a direct descendant of Pang Xiao. Everyone who heard the news was furious and fought to tear Zhao Yueshui into pieces. For a time, the barracks were filled with discussions about Zhao Yueshui's treason. They clamored to kill Zhao Yueshui. In just a moment, the situation had become tense. If Zhao Yueshui wasn't killed, it might cause a mutiny. Chapter 264. Just as the Tiger Army outside was clamoring to tear Zhao Yueshui into pieces, Huzi quickly walked into the tent. He leaned close to Pang Xiao and asked in a low voice, "Wang Yi, it's so chaotic outside. I'm afraid that the situation won't be easy to clean up. Do you really plan to kill Zhao Yueshui?" Pang Xiao looked up and said, "Of course it's true." He acted like a tyrant in Xihua City and aroused public anger. This king wants to kill him to pacify the army. What's more, he sold the information without any evidence. This king didn't accuse him wrongly. But Zhao Yueshui is your majesty's spy. If Wang Yi kills him, it's a public confrontation against your majesty. I'm afraid that it will cause the villain to speak ill of you behind your back and make your majesty more afraid of you. Pang Xiao sneered and said, "Do you think that this castration was entirely his idea? He usually acts like a tyrant in Xihua City. Although he straightens his back, doesn't this king have to put away his arrogance? Even if he looks down on this king in his heart, he's used to disobeying him in public, but disobeying him in private. Now he dares to criticize this king to his face. Where do you think he gets the courage?" Hearing this, Huzi's expression changed, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. "Your Highness, are you saying that this is the Emperor's order?" Pang Xiao shook his head. "Your Majesty is a smart person. This king is still useful. He won't shoot himself in the foot." Li Guanwen must have noticed something and communicated with Zhao Yueshui. "That's still difficult." Huzi's face turned pale. "Your Majesty has been afraid of Wang Yi for a long time. The braver Wang Yi is in battle, and the greater his contributions, the more your Majesty is afraid of him. Li Guanwen is your Majesty's eunuch. Since he can hold the position of eunuch in the ceremony directorate, it means that he must be smart and shrewd. How can such a guy misjudge your Majesty's intention towards Pang Xiao?" Although he knew that your Majesty was such a person, Huzi was still shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, the curtain was lifted and Zheng Pei in a dark blue robe walked in quickly. He said anxiously, "Wang Yi, Mr. Zheng is here. Have a seat." Pang Xiao raised his chin at Zheng Pei. Huzi brought a chair over and placed it properly. He cupped his hands at Zheng Pei. His polite and distant attitude was completely different from his previous intimate attitude. Zheng Pei felt bitter in his heart. He bowed to Pang Xiao first and said anxiously before sitting down, "Wang Yi, please think twice. Zhao Yueshui is Li Guanwen's adopted son. If you kill Zhao Yueshui, you will offend Li Guanwen. Li Guanwen has the most say in your Majesty. He is not sweet when making candy, but sour when making vinegar. You can't be reckless. If you kill Zhao Yueshui, you will offend the Heavenly Majesty. Your Majesty has all the power and can't tolerate such things like killing first and reporting later. Zhao Yueshui is someone your Majesty sent to you. Even if you want to beat a dog, you have to look at its owner. For the sake of your standing in the imperial court in the future, Wang Yi, please think carefully about what I said." At this point, Zheng Pei stood up and bowed again. Pang Xiao smiled calmly and looked very gentle under the candlelight. "Mr. Zheng, please sit down and talk." He didn't answer Zheng Pei directly. Zheng Pei's heart was full of bitterness. He knew that his behavior of secretly reporting Pang Xiao's every move to your Majesty finally pushed this young man away from him completely. He didn't trust him anymore, but he couldn't completely ignore him. After all, he was also the descendant of Pang Zhongxing. Zheng Pei slowly sat back on the chair and looked at Pang Xiao expectantly. "Mr. Zheng, what you said is reasonable," Pang Xiao said leisurely. His tone didn't seem to be talking about an important matter that would affect his future or even life and death. It was light and casual as if he were chatting. "With Mr. Zheng's intelligence, you should understand that even if this king doesn't kill Zhao Yueshui, some things are already settled. Some people who don't like this king will still dislike him. Zheng Pei was suffocated and couldn't think of a suitable answer for a long time. He knew that Pang Xiao was a smart person and couldn't be fooled with one or two nice words. Pang Xiao was telling the truth. Your Majesty's fear of Pang Xiao wouldn't decrease at all because of this. And the old officials of Beiji who surrendered wouldn't change their opinion of Pang Xiao because of this. This king knows that Mr. Zheng is thinking for this king, but now I believe that Mr. Zheng has already thought through some key points. Since some things can't be changed, why should this king be a pushover? Don't tell me that as a man, you don't even have the courage to speak loudly? That will only make you more vulnerable. Sooner or later, you will be bullied until you can't raise your head. Zheng Pei was convinced and couldn't find any words to refute. He could only nod. Pang Xiao glanced at Huzi. Huzi didn't worry as much as Zheng Pei. Seeing that Pang Xiao had made a decision, he rubbed his fists and was eager to try. After getting Pang Xiao's approval, he immediately rushed out to deal with Zhao Yueshui in high spirits. Only Pang Xiao and Zheng Pei were left in the tent. Zheng Pei looked at Pang Xiao's sharp eyes under the light. For a moment, he felt that he couldn't look straight at them and was extremely embarrassed. He used to think that he was the most trustworthy person around Pang Xiao. He also used to think that it was his betrayal that pushed away the person who used to trust him the most. But now it seemed that Pang Xiao had never really trusted him at all. He had memorized every detail of how he used Pang Xiao, but he had always pretended to be ignorant of it. He was like a patient wolf that had been staring at its prey and chasing after it. When the time was right, he would show his fangs. Now he couldn't touch Pang Xiao at all. He couldn't balance him, let alone control him. It was impossible for him to become Pang Xiao's trusted aide. Perhaps this trusted aide had always been self-proclaimed. Zheng Pei sighed and left. Pang Xiao looked at Zheng Pei's back. After a while, he withdrew his gaze and closed his eyes to rest. Sure enough, Huzi managed to get some useful information from Zhao Yueshui. Zhao Yueshui was a soft bag who appeared to be tough on the outside, but was actually timid on the inside. After being interrogated, Zhao Yueshui wished that he could die quickly. Huzi then fulfilled his wish and went to reply to Pang Xiao. Wang Yi, that eunuch confessed everything. Yes, Wang Yi guessed correctly. Li Guanwen did mention to Zhao Yueshui in private that when your majesty invited your mother, grandfather, and grandmother into the palace for a short stay, he ordered the empress to pay attention to what they said. You want to know some of your thoughts? That's to be expected. It's not easy to get my mother to talk. The emperor will make his next move. Pang Xiao played with the horsewhip in his hand and said, since that's the case, the battle here should end quickly. I'm worried that something will happen to my mother and the others. Huzi heard this and nodded heavily in agreement. Pang Xiao focused on thinking about tactics for 2 days. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability to win. It was just that the siege was weak and the supply line was long. Dezhou was far away, and after taking over the mess in Beiji, the treasury was very empty. The emperor was very strict with him and didn't give him silver rice. The supplies were not timely, and the Duke of Dingguo avoided the battle in Dian and closed the city gates. He couldn't feed his soldiers, so how could he stop them from stealing food? It was the same for the soldiers of Yin Dynasty who were guarding outside Great Yin City. If they couldn't eat, they could only steal. In the long run, the people would be the ones to suffer. Pang Xiao only wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Chapter 265. Dian Lu Yingshi, the prefect of Baochong, sent 30,000 mercenaries to request Emperor Yuankong to move the capital to Baochong to build a new capital. Emperor Yuankong refused and dismissed the petition. Lu Yingshi rebelled and appointed his relative Yuqi Shujie as the emperor of Dian. He changed the name of the dynasty to Kaiyuan, and Lu Yingshi was named as the regent. All the southern provinces and counties responded to the Kaiyuan emperor. Dian lost most of its land, and later Yin controlled the waterways. Lu Yingshi's grain was stolen. Huzi finished reading the secret report in a low voice. He clicked his tongue and said, "This Lu Yingshi is too daring." He failed to request to move the capital, so he elected an emperor. He even stole the grain that Jingdu collected and took care of the waterways. Won't Jingdu and the surrounding cities be starved of grain? Pang Xiao nodded thoughtfully. This is a chaotic world. So, such people are bound to exist. This Lu Yingshi is quite a scheming person. His actions are extremely disadvantageous for us. Why? Huzi asked curiously. The later Yin cut off the Dayan's grain. Isn't it the perfect time for us to attack the city? That's right. However, my initial focus was on the entire Dayan. After Lu Yingshi's actions, the Dayan was split in half. In the past, as long as we took Jingdu, the Dayan would be ours. Now that we've taken Jingdu, there's still a later Yin. Pang Xiao stood up and paced around. Our national treasury is also hard to support. If we only took Jingdu and controlled the Yuchi Yin, we could still grit our teeth and hold on. But now, even if we take down the capital, we can only capture the ones in the capital. Only the former Yin dynasty will be destroyed. I'm afraid this is not good. Huzi thought about it and understood. This Lu guy really knows how to pick a time. We can't care that much. Let's take Jingdu first. Even if the later Yin dynasty has the word Yin, the Dayan will still fall at the hands of the Zhou. Exactly. Now that the capital has become an isolated island without food, it won't last much longer. Huzi was in high spirits. We have to hurry. Pang Xiao walked to the map and carefully studied the countermeasures. He had to end this war as soon as possible, because Qin Yining was in the middle of the capital, which was about to run out of food. He didn't want her to starve and suffer. At this moment, Jingdo City was in chaos. The court had just auctioned off a large number of idle jobs to improve the status of the merchants. During this period of time, provisions had been continuously transported into the capital. The common people had not been happy for more than a few days before news came that the provisions on the road had been robbed and that the later Yin had established a dynasty in Baochang. The citizens of Jingdu fell into an incomparable panic. The capital of the Dayan dynasty was the capital, and the emperor was Emperor Yuankang. What was that later Yin? This was nothing more than a farce by the traitors. It was just an excuse to steal food from the people of the capital and the garrison. The panicked people filled the Yamen and Xuansu temple's gates, wanting to find someone to give them an explanation. However, this time, both the Yamen and Xuansu temple's gates were tightly shut. The people went to the grain stores to buy food, but all of the grain stores were closed and hung signs saying they were closed. Even the granaries of Jingdo were surrounded by layers of guards. The people excitedly charged through the streets and returned home in disappointment. After a few days, some people began to take their families and leave Jingdo. However, after 3 days, the outer city gates were heavily guarded. Everyone who entered or left the city had to go through strict checks. If anyone wanted to leave Jingdo with their families, they were ordered to be sent back. Someone had a conflict with the garrison and shouted, "Jingdo is about to be taken. We commoners have nothing to eat or drink. Are we waiting to die here? We want to go to the south and join the later Yin." Before this person could finish shouting, he was dragged away by the garrison. His pants were pulled down, and he was beaten 40 times. He was beaten until he was gasping for air. His wife and children cried as they carried him back into the city. This kind of situation happened at every gate in the outer city. While the people were panicking, they were also dissatisfied with the imperial court. They couldn't protect them and didn't allow them to escape. No wonder some people said that the Dayan dynasty deserved to be destroyed. At this time, Yuchi Yin was in a terrible fix. He rushed into retired emperor's bedchamber in large strides and said to his face, "Father Emperor, Yuchi Shujie has declared himself the emperor and turned the south of Baochang to the coast into his territory. He has established a later Yin dynasty. Father, if you still refuse to tell us the whereabouts of the silver, our Dayan will really be destroyed." The Emperor Emeritus lay on his side on the bed and leisurely smoked a water pipe. He inhaled and exhaled clouds and smoke with his eyes closed. "You are the Emperor of Dayan. Whether the country is destroyed or not, it's up to you. What does it have to do with me?" Yuchi Yin looked at the Emperor Emeritus in disbelief. "Father, don't you have any feelings for this country? After all, you were once the master of Great Yin. What's the use of you being greedy for such a large sum of silver?" Do you still expect to go out and establish a dynasty? How much silver can a person use in a lifetime? Do you still want to enjoy it for yourself? Can you be at ease with your conscience? Taking out this large sum of money to preserve Diane is the right thing to do. TSK. Even if the country is destroyed, I won't be the emperor. Why should I be anxious? Don't bother me again. Get out. The Emperor Emeritus took another puff of his water pipe and waved his hand at Yuchi Yin as if he was shooing away a fly. Yuchi Yin was so angry that his brain buzzed and his vision turned black. If it weren't for Eunuch Lu's quick reflexes, Yuchi Yin would have fallen to the ground in anger. This was his imperial father. This was the real reason why his father abdicated the throne for him. It wasn't because of his talent, but because there was no other candidate. It wasn't because his father really wanted to abdicate the throne, but because his father didn't want to be the emperor of a destroyed country. He wanted him to take the blame. He couldn't beat or scold him. He couldn't argue or persuade him. Yuchi Yin walked down the street in a daze and looked at the blue sky. His eyes were full of desolation and despair. Could it be that the heavens wanted the Dian to be destroyed? Say, should I agree to move the capital? Yuchi Yin asked Eunuch Lu beside him. Eunuch Lu hurriedly said, Your Majesty, if you agree to move the capital, you might be ambushed once you reach Baochang. That Lu Yingshi doesn't have good intentions. Maybe he doesn't want you to move the capital, but wants to trick you. He wants to be the master of Dian. Yuchi Yin smiled bitterly and said, How could I not know? That's why I refused at the beginning. But if I agree, maybe the Dian will be fine. Maybe I won't have to be the emperor of a destroyed country. The history books won't record me in such an unbearable manner. Eunuch Lu lowered his head. These words weren't something that an eunuch like him could say. At this moment, a guard rushed in and reported, Your Majesty, the Tiger Army has launched a general attack. Although Duke Ongwa has closed the city gates and refused to meet them, the Tiger Army is coming fiercely and has surrounded the capital from all sides. When Yuchi Yin heard this, his face turned pale. He looked up to the sky and roared, The heavens want me to die! The heavens want me to die! While Qin Huaiyuan was helping Duke Ongwa, Li Mian, defend the city, Qin Yining gathered everyone in the family Qin in Ci Shao Garden and announced his decision. Chapter 266. Qin Yining said in a low voice with a grave expression, Right now, the situation outside is very tense. Just now, Master Zhong sent someone to tell me that the capital has already been surrounded by Dezhou's soldiers. Previously, our soldiers were guarding the outer city gates and didn't allow the commoners to go out. Now, our people are scared back into the city and are guarding the city gates tightly. Even if we want to let the commoners out, we can't. When the entire family heard this, they were so nervous that their faces turned pale. They suddenly felt like dark clouds were pressing down on the city, and a building was about to collapse. What should we do? Isn't this country going to be destroyed? The old madam was so scared that tears welled up in her eyes. Mammy Qin hurriedly handed over a handkerchief to wipe the old madam's tears. Second madam said, Sister Yi, if that's really the case, we should guard the courtyard to the death. If we want to move, where will we move to? Qin Yining said, Second aunt, what we should do now is not to guard the courtyard to the death, but to leave this place. Think about it. Now that the city gates have been sealed, the provisions in the city will probably be supplied to the soldiers on the front lines first. Even so, we still have nearly 320,000 soldiers left. How much of the provisions have we consumed? The commoner situation is even worse than the soldiers. They can't afford to buy provisions and they can't escape the city gates. If His Majesty can't come up with a concrete solution, I'm afraid that it will soon lead to a mass uprising. If the commoners turn into a mob, think about it. Where will they rush to first? The granary? The government? Or the wealthy families in the capital? This is too scary. The Sun Clan's daughter clenched her handkerchief with trembling hands. Our family still has guards. Two fists can't fight four hands. Guards are also useless. Qin Yining pursed his lips and said, My father is a famous official, and I'm also following the imperial edict to cultivate. Our family's target is too high. If the mob rushes in, we won't be able to escape. Besides, there's another layer of consideration. Qin Yining looked at the old madam, second madam, and the Sun clan. He said in a low voice, "Our family doesn't have much provisions left. If we guard here, not only will we have to face the mob's looting and revenge, what will we do after the provisions run out? Soon, we won't be able to buy food in the city." Heavens! Old madam was so frightened that she started crying. There's a wolf in front and a tiger in the back. How can we live like this? This group of goddamn idiots. The old fatuous ruler hid the silver and didn't buy food for everyone. Wasn't it my son who thought of a way to solve the food problem? Not only are they ungrateful, they even want to take revenge on us. The members of the Sun clan and second madam were so frightened that they started sobbing. Miss Eight and Qin Huaining were already in tears. Han's second young mistress was only 3 months pregnant, and at this moment, she was so frightened that she started retching, causing everyone to be nervous. Qin Yining hurriedly comforted them and said, "That's why I said we should quickly pack up our things before things get chaotic. Take the useful and valuable items and follow me to Mount Changchun." They all looked at Qin Yining, their eyes filled with fear at the unknown future. Qin Yining said, "I raised a lot of refugees in my garden on Mount Changchun. Does everyone still remember? I've been using Zhao Yun Agency's money to provide food for them. They are grateful to me. Everyone follow me. Those refugees in Ningyuan will definitely protect us from being attacked by the mob. The most important thing is that once we run out of food, we won't be able to buy food anywhere. We can still rely on the mountain to eat. Fortunately, it's not winter now. We can hunt in the mountain, dig for wild vegetables, fish in the river, and catch birds in the trees. We won't starve to death." Speaking up to here, Qin Yining relaxed and laughed. "Everyone can rest assured. I've lived like this on the mountain for 6 years. I am very skilled at hunting and catching birds. I can even feed our whole family. I will definitely not let everyone starve to death." Everyone was sobbing as they looked at Qin Yining, who was smiling optimistically. For the first time, they truly pitied him. They had been living under the protection of the family Qin. They had been living a carefree life. When they heard that they wouldn't be able to buy food in the city, they panicked and didn't know how to make a living. However, Qin Yining had to face this kind of hardship when he was 8 years old. He didn't have food or water. He had to survive on the mountain alone. That kind of bitter life lasted for 6 years. It took up almost half of his young life, and the most precious thing was that he didn't let himself be defeated by the difficulties. Instead, he survived and grew up to be a smart and tenacious girl. The members of the Sun clan hugged Qin Yining and sobbed. "Sister Yi, my good child, my good child." Qin Yining hugged the members of the Sun clan and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he comforted. "Mother, don't cry. To be honest, if our family goes to the mountain to make a living, our chances of survival will be very high. We have many people, and we can take care of each other. We also have the protection and support of the people in Ningyuan. We have many people and strength. We won't starve to death. At least we won't have no one to talk to, right?" After hearing the last sentence, the members of the Sun clan felt even sadder. Not only did their precious daughter have to survive alone in the deep mountains, but she also lived alone for 6 years. She didn't even have anyone to talk to. The members of the Sun clan hugged Qin Yining and cried to their heart's content. Old Madam and the others couldn't help but feel sad for Qin Yining. Even more so, they were afraid that they would have to live this kind of inhumane life. Qin Yining comforted his mother and Old Madam. Before he could stop them from crying, Second Master, Third Master, Qin Yu, and Qin Han also returned. When they saw the womenfolk hugging each other and crying, they thought that something big had happened. After hearing Qin Yining's explanation, they heaved a sigh of relief. Second Master said, "Sister Yi and eldest brother are indeed father and son." Eldest brother also said the same thing and told us to come back quickly. Taking advantage of the fact that the city hasn't become hopelessly chaotic, we should quickly pack up and go to Changchun Mountain to seek refuge with the refugees that Sister Yi is raising. The commoners will remember Sister Yi's kindness. Other places won't care about this, but those refugees will definitely protect our family. After hearing Qin Huaiyuan's words, Old Madam no longer hesitated and immediately said, "Since we are going to escape, let's release the newly bought servants. We don't need their ransom money. If they follow us, we won't be able to raise so many people, right?" However, Qin Yining shook his head. Even if we release them, how can they find new jobs in this kind of world? If they don't have a job, won't they starve to death? Let's bring them up the mountain. Even if they have to eat chaff and swallow vegetables, at least they have a way to survive. It doesn't make sense that our family Qin can coexist peacefully with the refugees on the mountain, but we can't tolerate our own servants who have served us for so long. Sister E is right. Let's go together as a family. Second Master also said, "Our family Qin can't do such a heartless thing. If this spread out, how can eldest brother keep a foothold in the army? Don't forget, those guards are also people. They also have relatives in the city. Who knows which one of their relatives is in our family? It's better not to cause any complications." Hearing Qin Yining and Second Master's words, Old Madam's face and ears turned red. She awkwardly waved her hand and said, all right. I'll listen to you. This old woman has become muddle-headed. Don't pay attention to me." This was the first time that Old Madam had said such self-deprecating words to admit defeat. Qin Yining and Second Master couldn't help but look at each other and let out a sigh of relief in their hearts. At this critical juncture, it wasn't appropriate to cause any more trouble. If Old Madam was obstinate in going about things the wrong way, they would have to waste their time trying to make peace. There would only be benefits and no harm if Old Madam was no longer obstinate. Everyone quickly gathered their family members and packed their luggage. Qin Yining specially instructed everyone, lock up the valuables that aren't easy to move and put them in the cellar. As for the rest of the furniture and decorations, don't think about leaving them behind. Bring some practical clothes. Not only summer clothes, but also autumn and winter clothes. If this war crosses into the new year, we still have to spend the winter on the mountain. The entire family went to prepare with worry. They also dismissed the craftsmen who were in charge of renovating the back residence. Everyone from each branch and courtyard gathered together to have a small meeting in low voices. When it was midnight, Second Master had already taken care of the night patrols. Family Qin's family brought their servants and drove a carriage out of the marquee of Anping's estate, which had long been reduced to ruins, towards the outer city. Qin Yining, Ji Yun, Qiu Lu, Bing Tang, the Sun Clan, and Mother Jean all anxiously sat in a large carriage. The Sun Clan's daughter couldn't stop crying. Mother Jean consoled her in a low voice from the side. Bing Tang and Qiu Lu, who had been affected by the Sun Clan, were also on the verge of tears. Qin Yining laughed and said, "Mother, don't be sad. In one's life, misfortune and fortune always depend on each other. There are 3 ups and downs until one grows old. Don't worry. Even if we can't live in luxury, your daughter will definitely not let you starve." Sun Clan's daughter shook her head. "I'm worried about your father, your grandmother, and your aunt." Qin Yining laughed. "You don't have to worry about that. Father is in the army, so naturally, he won't be the first to starve. Moreover, with father's intelligence, he won't let himself be at a disadvantage. Grandmother, you don't have to worry either. I think that grandmother will definitely find a way to bring the entire family to Baochang or the coastal area." Sun Clan's daughter thought about it. Qin Yining's words made sense. She took a few deep breaths before saying, "You're right. They'll be fine. As long as they're alive, there will be a chance to see them again." "That's right. Mother, you just have to take good care of your body. Your daughter will take good care of you." Qin Yining held Sun Clan's hand and shook it affectionately. Sun Clan's daughter smiled with relief and tears in her eyes. She held Qin Yining's hand tightly in her own. Mount Changchun was located in the outer city of the capital. It was 40 li away from the inner city, and there was still some distance between it and the southern city gate of the outer city. It was backed by Mount Changchun, and there was even a spring on the mountain. It was a good place to live in seclusion and recuperate. Because this place was occupied by the imperial family, there were very few people around, and the common people didn't dare to come here easily. Therefore, Qin Yining's family members were allowed to go up the mountain without any obstructions. Master Zhong had been waiting in front of the gate for a long time with a few people on the mountain. Seeing Qin Yining help Sun Clan's daughter out of the carriage, Master Zhong hurriedly led people to greet her. "Boss, you're here." Behind Master Zhong were a tall, middle-aged man, a woman in her early 20s who was dressed in men's clothing, and an old man in his 70s who was wearing an old scholar's robe. When they saw Qin Yining, they knelt down and kowtowed. "Greetings, benefactor." Chapter 267. Qin Yining went to help the old man up. "Mr. and I, please get up. Brother Liu, Sister Jiao, you don't need me to help you up, right?" "I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare. When I see my benefactor, I naturally have to salute." Old and I bowed again. And I Liping was over 70 years old. When he first came to the mountain, he was already terminally ill. Qin Yining didn't give up on the elderly and the children, and helped him overcome that obstacle. Scholar Ni's words were reasonable. These days, he was like the village chief of Ninggarden. He also organized a few literate people to teach the children how to read. He had a lot of prestige on the mountain. "Yes, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare." The middle-aged man also bowed. "Kowtowing is a must. If it wasn't for my benefactor's help, I, Lu Dahan, wouldn't be here today." Lu Dahan was 32 years old. He had studied in his early years, but because he wasn't smart, he spent all his family's money and didn't make any progress in his studies. He could only make a living by farming. When he fled with his family, his wife and daughter died on the way. When he went up the mountain, he carried his sick mother. Madame Lu was also very sick, and it was Bing Tang who personally treated her. Lu Dahan's gratitude to Qin Yining couldn't be described with words. However, when they heard Lu Dahan say, "I wouldn't dare," the people who heard the news couldn't help but laugh. The young woman in men's clothing kicked Lu Dahan. "You uncouth man, why are you learning from Mr. and I? Are you waiting for your benefactor to come and help you?" This shrewish woman had a bit of Sun Ernyang's temperament. Her surname was Liu, and her name was Jiao. She was a widow and had a lot of appeal among women. She was born a hunter and was good at hunting in the mountains. With these skills, many men were convinced by her. Seeing that Lu Dahan was kicked by Miss Jiao again, the onlookers laughed. The family Qin people standing behind Qin Yining were shocked by the spirit of the refugees in Ninggarden. When they came, they thought that the people living here would be a group of beggars. Starving beggars must be like tigers and wolves. They would protect their own little chance of survival because they were in a competitive relationship with each other. Whoever grabbed food would live, and whoever didn't would die. How could they be willing to let outsiders in? But now, although these people's clothes were a little tattered, they were all very clean. Moreover, they all had smiles on their faces and were full of kindness. When they looked at the Qin Yining, their respectful attitude was so obvious that the family Qin people couldn't help but be shocked. Master Zhong stood beside the matriarch and the rest and said in a low voice, "Master has always been providing for these people. He gave them jobs, gave them food, treated their illnesses, and let the children study. Master didn't ask them to go out and become refugees. He didn't let them starve or die in the drought. He also didn't abandon any elderly or children. You don't know how great of a thing Master has done." When the family Qin people heard this, the shock in their hearts was indescribable. "Everyone, please come in. We heard that our benefactor's family is coming, so we have already tidied up the best house." Miss Jiao greeted them with a smile. Qin Yining said, "How can we do that? Let's follow the old rules. The best house is reserved for the elderly and children. We'll just follow the crowd." "Benefactor, don't be so serious with us. Your family can get used to living in the same place." Qin Yining thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. They wouldn't be living on the mountain for a day. It wouldn't be too late to settle down first and then distribute them slowly. Qin Yining smiled and went to help the matriarch, then greeted the family members to come in. The family Qin people supported each other and walked into Ninggarden. At this time, the people of Ninggarden who had heard the news gathered in front of the door. When they saw people coming in, they neatly made way for them and smiled kindly at the family Qin people. Some people greeted Qin Yining loudly, and some people whispered, "This is our benefactor's family. We can't neglect them. It's Wisdom Pan An's family. Is Wisdom Pan among them? Is that tall, old Master Wisdom Pan? Someone pointed at second old master and asked. Then a well-informed person said, Wisdom Pan and is guarding the capital now. He's a hero. Our benefactor's family is all good people. We have to take good care of them. Hearing the discussions of the people, the family Qin people finally understood that Qin Yining had done a lot of bad things outside. The matriarch even felt her face heat up. This was because she had complained about Qin Yining spending money to support people who had nothing to do with him. But looking at it now, wasn't this kind of good karma rewarded with good karma? Back then, Qin Yining had helped these people. Now that they were in trouble, there were immediately so many people who came to help them out of goodwill. They were all basking in Qin Yining's glory. Everyone sighed with emotion as they entered the courtyard. Ning Garden's tall walls were like a small village. There were built houses everywhere. The legendary rare flowers and trees had long been sold to support the people. They walked along a small path until they reached the magnificent building in the middle that looked like a celestial palace. Miss Jiu said, The rooms on the second floor have been tidied up. Benefactor, please help the people in your residence settle down first. Qin Yining thought for a moment and didn't immediately decline. He only asked Master Zhong to help settle the people down while he led the family Qin people upstairs. We're here to seek refuge. It's good that our family can gather together. Not to mention now, we still have to learn to work to support ourselves in the future. Let's just put up with it for a while. The matriarch wasn't used to it and didn't say anything. However, second old mistress said, This is already very good. As long as the family is together, what's there to be discontent about? Second old master smiled and glanced at second old mistress. In this way, the matriarch and Mammy Qin squeezed in with third old master and Qin Yu. Second old master and second old mistress shared a room with Qin Han and his wife. The Sun clan and Mother Jean shared a room with Qin Yining and the three maidservants. Eighth young Miss and Qin Huaining lived with the head maidservant next door to Qin Yining's room. At first, everyone wasn't used to it. There were mosquitoes on the mountain, and there were no rules like at home. They couldn't ask the maidservants to serve them. Besides sleeping, there were people talking everywhere. It was as noisy as a market. These people who lived like princes all year round felt uncomfortable. However, Qin Yining adapted well. Early in the morning, Qin Yining got up and washed up. She put on a coarse dress and tied her hair into a long braid. She brought Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and Xiu Lu downstairs to prepare breakfast. The large Ning garden was already bustling with activity. Seeing four beautiful young girls fetching water, many of the men glanced at them and then lowered their heads to avoid them, blushing furiously. Qin Yining and Ji Yun chopped firewood, Xiu Lu and Bing Tang washed rice and cooked rice. When they started the stove, Qin Yining didn't forget to chat and laugh with ninth young Miss and the other women. During this time, they also received salted vegetables and dried salted fish from the women. A group of children came back with fresh wildflowers and fruits. A little boy in patched clothes ran over with a red face. He stuffed a bunch of colorful wildflowers and a bunch of wild fruits wrapped in big leaves into Qin Yining's hands. Then he turned around and ran away. Qin Yining couldn't help laughing out loud at his antics. Her tinkling laughter attracted everyone's attention. Ninth young Miss laughed. Li Go, you little brat. Why do you only know how to give flowers to your benefactor? Why don't you give one to me? The 7-year-old Li Go stuck his tongue out at ninth young Miss, turned around, and ran away. On the second floor, old Madam looked at the scene downstairs through the window. She was deep in thought. Second Madam smiled and said to second old master, Our niece isn't simple. As adults, we can't fall behind. Old master, let's change our clothes. We also need to go down and do something. We can't wait for others to serve us. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 268. Just as the family Qin people were gradually adapting to their new lives, the situation in the capital had already reached an extremely tense state. The Tiger Army had firmly guarded the several gates of the outer city and arranged for soldiers to patrol around. The people in the capital had no way to escape and had completely cut off all contact with the outside world. Not to mention that Southern Yan's Liu Yingshi controlled the waterways and blocked the food supply. Now, even without Liu Yingshi, even if the retired emperor was willing to reveal the whereabouts of the huge sum of money, it would be difficult for the Yuchi Yin to sell food supplies. The limited food in the city had become an extremely precious thing. The Yuchi Yin took the lead to eat thin porridge and ordered that food supplies be given to the army first. However, the food had to pass through many people's hands and layers of skin were peeled off. In reality, the army didn't get much. Nearly a month and a half had passed. The Yuchi Yin and the Empress had lost more than 10 caddies of meat due to hunger, but many officials could still eat white rice. The soldiers on the front lines, on the other hand, were getting worse day by day. Now that the autumn tiger was running rampant, the soldiers were only provided 2 meals a day. Each meal was only given a woman's fist-sized, black, stone-like biscuit of mixed grain bran. Fuck his mother. Is this fucking for humans to eat? A soldier guarding the city took a bite of the dry biscuit and almost broke half of his teeth. After chewing for a long time, he stretched his neck and swallowed the food in his mouth with a gulp. Be content, we still have biscuits to eat. The people in the city have already started digging wild vegetables and peeling off tree bark. It is said that many people have already starved to death. There are even people who eat the biscuits. The person who spoke took a small bite of the biscuit, as if he was carefully tasting the taste of the food. After that, he drank a mouthful of cold water and carefully swallowed it. Hey, did you hear? Yesterday, Minister Liu's residence was also broken into. The people rushed in and didn't even look at the valuables. They only snatched the food. However, Minister Liu's residence also doesn't have much to eat. On the side, several people were talking at once. These officials are living more comfortably than the emperor. The emperor has been eating thin porridge for more than a month. The officials even have steamed buns at home. We don't eat well, but we won't starve to death. The people are suffering. The people of Dezhou have surrounded the capital like an iron bucket. They're trying to trap us inside the city. I really don't know how we're going to fight this war. The people of Dezhou are too cruel. Initially, there were 350,000 Yen soldiers defending the city. Prince Ning had killed 30,000 of them. After handing them over to Dukin, there were only 300,000 left. The Tiger Army, on the other hand, suffered less than 1,000 casualties. The most shameful thing was that the Tiger Army was attacking the city while they were defending it. With such a great disparity in combat strength, coupled with the panic caused by hunger and the cutoff of supplies, these soldiers couldn't even eat. They felt as if Yin Wangyi and the black and white impermanents were already standing beside them, grinning sinisterly. They looked down at the city walls and saw that the soldiers of the Zhou dynasty were also cooking. They could faintly smell the aroma of stewed meat. Although the Zhou dynasty supply line was long, at least they were not surrounded. If they did not have enough food, they could still hunt, fish, dig up some wild vegetables, or plant some vegetables. Compared to the trapped capital, the Tiger Army was much more comfortable. Smelling the faint aroma of stewed meat below the city walls, the soldiers began to salivate. The tasteless and hard pancakes were even harder to swallow. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from the steps. Immediately, someone greeted Duke Grand Preceptor Qin. They immediately straightened their backs. They saw Dukin, who was dressed in golden armor and holding a tasseled helmet, walk over. Half a body behind him was Qin Huaiyuan, who was dressed in a light green Confucian robe. His face was much thinner than before. Behind Qin Huaiyuan, there was an extremely beautiful manservant and a middle-aged man who was his personal attendant. Everyone hurriedly saluted. Dukin waved his hand and stood at the city gates, looking down. What he saw was an endless stretch of military camps. The Tiger Army's commander's flag fluttered in the wind. The golden tiger on the flag bared its fangs, as if it would pounce down at any moment and devour people. Dukin felt his legs go soft when he saw this scene. When he truly fought against Pang Xiao, he saw the Tiger Army's individual combat ability of 1 against 10. He also saw Pang Xiao's demonic talent in arranging troops. Dukin originally thought that his military advisor was famous for being resourceful. With the ability of Wise Pan, and he was able to scheme and kill Pang Zhongjing. How could he not be able to defeat Pang Zhongjing's son now? However, in reality, the battle between the two of them was truly a match for each other, a match between a general and a talent. The Tiger Army had few people, but they could fight 1 against 10. They were at a disadvantage when it came to sieging the city. The Dian dynasty had many people, but their combat strength was weak and disorganized. However, they were at a disadvantage when it came to defending the city. Based on the game between Qin Huaiyuan and Pang Xiao, the 320,000 troops that were originally handed over to Duke and should have been more than 300,000 now. However, after Duke avoided battle for a period of time, he fell for Pang Xiao's trap and was lured out of the city. He was trapped in a valley on the west side of the city for a day and a night. At that time, if not for Qin Huaiyuan's timely rescue, Dukan wouldn't have been able to return, let alone the 20,000 soldiers he brought out. Dukan trembled with fear when he recalled the scene that day. From then on, he would rather die than open the city gates to fight. No matter how the enemy shouted and cursed, he pretended not to hear. Thinking of this, Duke N's entire body trembled. He pointed at Dezhou's military camp, which was not far from the city gates, and said with a heavy expression, "How do we fight this?" Qin Huaiyuan stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze was deep. He knew in his heart that no matter how they fought, Dian was an arrow at the end of its flight. If there was enough food, even if there were only 30,000 people defending the city, he was confident that he could hold off the 100,000 troops of the Tiger Army. He could directly wear down the Tiger Army until they ran out of food and had no choice but to retreat. However, there was no food in the city. The soldiers risked their lives and fought on the battlefield for a full meal. Now that they couldn't even afford to fill their stomachs, could they rely on making empty promises to the soldiers all day long so that they wouldn't starve? Would they be able to fill their stomachs just by thinking about serving the court? There were people in the city who starved to death every day. Under starvation, the common people could also turn into mobs. Which of the large families in the capital had not been invaded by mobs? Some of them had their families broken up, while others had fled in panic. However, robbing these was far from enough for the common people to fill their stomachs. If they couldn't eat wild vegetables, they could still eat tree bark. When all the tree bark was removed, there were still grass roots. However, the capital was only so big. If all the grass roots were eaten, what would happen if there was nothing left to eat? Then only people would be left to eat each other. The common people were like this when they were anxious. What about these soldiers? He was afraid that when the time came, before the soldiers could eat each other, they would start a rebellion. Qin Huaiyuan lowered his head, thinking about the chaos in the city, thinking about the emperor who was so hungry that he walked like he was floating, thinking about his family who ate wild vegetables to fill their stomachs. A sense of powerlessness once again swept through his body. Dezhou didn't need to expend much effort. As long as they surrounded them for another half a month, the capital would collapse on its own. Cannibalism would be enough to destroy the country. Qin Huaiyuan closed his eyes. Immediately, his chest felt stuffy. He felt dizzy and his vision blurred. His body swayed and he fell down. Marquis! Chao Yuqing noticed that Qin Huaiyuan's body was swaying and hurriedly supported him. Together with Qi Tai, they slowly laid Qin Huaiyuan flat on the ground. Dukan was also shocked. He hurriedly said, "Could it be that Grand Preceptor Qin is dizzy from hunger? Quickly bring some water and some food." The soldiers who had just complained that the pancakes were hard to swallow also felt sad. Even Grand Preceptor Qin had fainted from hunger. It seemed that they really were going to run out of food. Qin Huaiyuan was helped down the city gate tower by Chao Yuqing and Qi Tai. At the foot of the city gate tower, in Dezhou's barracks not far away, Pang Xiao put away the monocular. He carefully put it through the silver chain and hung it on his waist. He furrowed his brows in worry. Huzi asked curiously, "Master, what did you see?" "We've already trapped the capital for 43 days. "That's right." Huzi sat cross-legged on the ground next to Pang Xiao and said, "It seems that the capital is almost at the end of its rope. On such a hot day, the common people are trapped in a city hungry. It would be strange if they didn't go crazy." Pang Zhao's brows furrowed even tighter. So, she must also be hungry. As Pang Zhao spoke, he slowly lowered his head and grabbed his hair with both hands. Huzi finally understood what Pang Zhao was thinking. However, after thinking about it, that was indeed the case. There were so many people in the capital, and there were no supplies. Even if they ate everything that could be eaten, a large number of people would starve to death. Under these circumstances, Qin Yining was a weak girl who had not recovered from her injuries and needed to rest. Would she be able to make it through? Huzi only dared to think this in his heart. He definitely did not dare to say it out loud in front of Wang Yi. He could only change the topic. Wang Yi, should we continue cooking the meat soup? Why don't we let the brothers drink some first? Actually, the Tiger Army deliberately cooked meat soup every day under the city gate to let the Yin Dynasty people smell it. This was also a way for Pang Zhao to shake the Dayan people's hearts. He did this to make the other side unable to understand the true situation of the Tiger Army's supplies. Secondly, he could shake the hearts of the Yin Dynasty people. To let the starving people watch the enemy eat meat every day, the mental torture, temptation, and suppression was not something that could be calculated. However, in reality, the Tiger Army supplies did indeed have a gap. They only had the advantage of freedom compared to the Yin Dynasty people. At the very least, they could go further and think of a way. They would not be trapped in the city and starve to death like the people in the capital. Pang Zhao lowered his head and was silent for a long time before saying, "Boyle, this battle must end quickly. If we continue to surround them, this king is afraid." Pang Zhao didn't say anything further. However, there was a resolute look in his sharp eyes. After standing up and pacing for a while, Pang Zhao called Huzi in a low voice and ordered, "Think of a way to send a message to the Marquis of Anping. Tell him that this king wants to meet him in secret. You can arrange the details." Huzi was startled when he heard this. Then, he nodded with a serious expression and quickly retreated. Pang Zhao looked at the closed gates of the capital not far away with his hands behind his back. His heart was so anxious that it was about to grow wings and fly to Qin Yining's side. His beloved woman must be suffering right now, but the worst thing was that he was the one who caused her suffering. However, because of his identity, this battle had to continue. This was the helplessness of being born in a chaotic world. At this time, the person Pang Zhao was worried about was squatting in front of the stove and cooking a large pot of dark brown wild vegetable soup with Miss Gio. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 269. Benefactor, will your family's old lord be able to get used to eating this kind of wild vegetable soup? Scholar and I asked worriedly. Now that we don't have any more food, we can only eat this. Qin Yining's small face was so thin that it wasn't even as big as a grown man's palm, but her pair of almond eyes seemed even bigger and brighter. Scholar and I glanced at Miss 8 and Qin Huaning, who were sitting not far behind them and silently crying, and couldn't help but sigh. They were all daughters of the family Qin, but Miss 8 and Qin Huaning couldn't endure hardships. They couldn't go out to dig for wild vegetables, and they couldn't even hunt. When they were asked to do some washing and cooking, they looked helpless. They were simply two young misses who didn't do any household chores. During this period of time, the servants that the family Qin brought up the mountain were all busy with their own tasks. Most of the work fell to the men like second old master, third old master, Qin Yu, and Qin Han. Next to them were Qin Yining and her three loyal servant girls who could endure hardships the most. At first, there was still some food stored up on the mountain, and Master Zhong had deliberately prepared a lot of food before coming up the mountain. But no matter how much food there was, it couldn't support the large number of people. The consumption was high, and there was no supply for a long time. Now, not to mention 10 taels of silver per caddy. Even if one offered 100 taels of silver per caddy, they probably wouldn't be able to buy it. As the number of disaster victims increased day by day, hunting and digging for wild vegetables was no longer an easy task. They had taken over the mountain, but the people in the city had dug out all the grass roots and eaten all the tree bark. At first, there were often people who accidentally ate poisonous grass and died from poisoning. But now more and more people died, and it was hard to tell how they died. Every time there was a famine, the first to die were always the elderly and children, who on the mountain didn't have a family to feed, who didn't want their old father, mother, or children to live. The food was bought with Qin Yining's money, so she had absolute authority. Some people secretly harbored evil intentions, but most of the people around them were deeply grateful to Qin Yining. If they did not want to be condemned by the public, they could only suppress it. However, to their surprise, the Qin Yining did not leave all the food for the Qin family, nor did he abandon the elderly and children. After the food reserves gradually decreased, the healthy adults began to mainly eat wild vegetables and game to fill their stomachs. There were so many people in the family Qin. Other than old madam, everyone was learning how to work. The remaining food was given to the old madam and the pregnant Han's second young mistress to eat. 20 days ago, when Qin Yining held a bowl of porridge that could reflect a person's figure and wanted to take a sip, she saw a doggy beside her, who was as skinny as a monkey. She saw the children's wide and watery black eyes. She saw that these children no longer had the energy to pick wildflowers for her. She couldn't swallow the porridge no matter how hard she tried. From that day onwards, Qin Yining did not eat a single mouthful of food. Bing Tang became anxious when she saw this. She told Miss Jiao, Lu Dahan, Scholar and the others about Qin Yining's recent injury. A few days ago, the Qin residents met with a disaster and lost a large number of people. Everyone knows about this. Our miss was seriously injured and barely managed to survive. However, due to excessive blood loss, her foundation was damaged. Before she could recover, she came up the mountain. I can give her medicine, but she can't just starve like this. If the blood loss can't be replenished, I'm afraid it won't benefit her lifespan. Although Bing Tang was young, her medical skills were outstanding. She was also a descendant of the Tang family. Which person on the mountain did not have a headache or fever through her hands? Therefore, everyone on the mountain respected Bing Tang very much. When they heard Bing Tang's words, they became anxious. When they hunted some wild animals or picked some sweet wild fruits, they would first give them to Qin Yining. Scholar was 72 years old this year. Before today, he was given a piece of mixed flour pancake every day. He also gave half of it to Qin Yining. However, Qin Yining refused, so Scholar gave the other half of the pancake to the other children. From today onwards, the elderly and children were also out of food. They had almost caught all the wild animals on the mountain. The weather was dry and it had not rained for a long time, so the wild vegetables grew slowly. The next step would be to eat the bark of the trees. When Qin Yining saw that the soup was almost ready, he scooped a bowl for Scholar Then he scooped a bowl for Miss 8 and Qin Huaning. Miss 8 smiled gratefully at Qin Yining. On the other hand, Qin Huaning lowered his head expressionlessly. He was probably so hungry that he did not have the energy to smile. Qin Yining did not mind. He asked Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Xiao Lu to help him scoop up the wild vegetable soup and send it upstairs. Unexpectedly, the door of the staircase, which was usually not closed, was closed today. Someone even bolted it from the inside. Bing Tang knocked on the door. Not long after, the door was opened slightly. Mammy Qin opened the door. Miss 4. Mammy Qin looked a little embarrassed. Qin Yining smiled and said, "The vegetable soup is ready. The people who went out to hunt are not back yet. Eat some soup to fill your stomach." Mammy Qin smiled and nodded. However, she did not have any intention of letting Qin Yining in. She reached out to take the bowl in her hand. Qin Yining looked at her suspiciously. Then he saw the bloodstains and white fur left under her fingernails. His heart skipped a beat. He pushed open the door, and his breath was immediately filled with the fragrance of stewed meat. "Mammy Qin, the people who went out to hunt are not back yet. Why are you still hiding meat in the room?" Mammy Qin lowered her head and did not speak. Bing Tang, Ji Yun, and Xiao Lu also came in. Mammy Qin anxiously closed the door. Qin Yining quickly walked inside and found that the windows were all closed. He couldn't help but sneer. "It's a hot day. Don't you think it's hot?" He came to old madam's room and pushed open the door. Bang! The old madam and Han's second young mistress in the room were shocked. At this time, The two of them were each holding a small rabbit leg and happily gnawing on it. In front of them was a casserole. The soup inside was bubbling. In the corner of the room, there were scattered bloodstains. The snow-white rabbit's fur was peeled off and thrown on the ground. The plum blossom-shaped ribbon that Pang Xiao had personally tied around Airbai's neck was now soaked in blood. Qin Yining's head buzzed. You ate my Airbai? Old Madam drank a mouthful of soup and smacked her lips. Come quickly. I originally wanted to ask you to come. Look at how thin you are. Drink some soup to nourish your body. Han's second young mistress was not pregnant yet, but she no longer had morning sickness. It was the time when she could eat. She didn't even raise her head as she drank the soup. Mammy Qin awkwardly said, Fourth young mistress, Old Madam and second young mistress both need to eat nourishing food. This morning, Old Madam only ate a bowl of vegetable soup. She was really hungry. Coincidentally, the people who went out to hunt were not back yet. So I said, facing Qin Yining's angry expression, Mammy Qin couldn't explain. Which day did I not give you meat to eat? When the whole family was eating vegetable soup, I also left the best for you. My little rabbit is not even as big as a woman's palm. After shedding its skin and removing its bones, can it still have 2 tails of meat? Just how heartless are you guys to not even let go of such a small rabbit? The people who went out to hunt will be back soon. You can't wait for even a moment. Old Madam didn't have time to be embarrassed. She threw the spoon into the bowl and sneered. Is this how filial you are to grandmother? Now that there is a famine, only you would raise this food as a pet. Is 2 tails of meat not meat? 2 tails of meat can nourish your second sister-in-law's body and also let her give birth to a son for your second cousin brother. Han's second young mistress drank the soup and said incoherently, Sister E, later sister-in-law will compensate you with 100 rabbits. Don't be angry. Come and drink the soup. The meat soup cooked in the big pot doesn't even have the taste of meat. Come and taste it. Qin Yining's tears flowed down. Even when she was starving, she never thought of killing Airbai because it was personally given to her by Pang Xiao. He said that it was a token between them and also a token of peace between De Zhou and Dian. He even personally untied the plum blossom pattern on the jade pendant and tied it around Airbai's neck. At that time, they were so close that she could still remember the unique smell on Pang Xiao's body. She understood all the principles and understood that in a war, everyone had to rely on their own ability. However, she saw with her own eyes the commoners starving to death on the streets one by one. She saw with her own eyes the numb and empty eyes of the people who ate their children. When she was the hungriest, she thought of the bowl of cold noodles that Pang Xiao personally cooked for her. She really hoped that Pang Xiao would suddenly appear and save them from the abyss of suffering. No matter how hungry she was, she didn't want to eat Airbai. She hid Airbai in the room and carefully took care of it. At night, she hugged it to sleep, because without it, there seemed to be nothing that could prove their pledge of eternal love. However, now that Airbai had been eaten, Qin Yining felt that the nerves that had been supporting her all this time had suddenly snapped. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer. When old Madam saw Qin Yining like this, she also felt guilty. She put on a strong front and said, Isn't it just a beast? As for you, don't think that I don't know where that rabbit of yours came from. After the peace talks in Xihua City, you brought that beast back. Later on, that evil spirit with the surname Foam came to our country to flaunt his power. Let me tell you, that person with the surname Foam caused us to become like this. I only ate the rabbit that he gave you. I haven't even taught you a lesson yet. You have close ties with him. Don't tell me that you still want to rebel. She pinned a label on her because she felt guilty. Qin Yining waved her hand. She didn't want to say another word to someone like Old Madam. She picked up the plum blossom net from the blood-stained rabbit's fur and turned to leave Old Madam's room. Miss Bing Tang and Xiao Lu hurriedly chased after her and supported Qin Yining on her left and right. Ji Yun sneered. You've really broadened my horizons. There's actually such an ungrateful and shameless old woman like you in this world. Grand Preceptor Qin is such a glorious person. How can he have a mother like you? Truly, a wicked bamboo produces good bamboo shoots. Or did you steal a child from somewhere and raise him? Filthy. Bah! You're rebelling. Someone come. Someone come? You're now the biggest burden. You need people to serve you all day. Do you still think that you're in the residence? Ji-yun glared at old madam in disdain and turned to chase after her. She was afraid that something would happen to Qin Yining. Ji-yun found Qin Yining, Bing Tang, and Xiao Lu beside a small stream outside Ningyuan. Qin Yining squatted by the stream and personally washed the bloodstains on the plum blossom net. She was no longer crying. However, when she saw her squatting on the ground and her thin and weak back that seemed to be able to poke through her clothes, Ji-yun's nose turned sour, and she almost cried. Wang Yi, when are you coming? If you don't come, the future Wang Fei will be tortured to death. Not only will she starve, but she will also be tortured in her heart. Ji-yun wanted to persuade her. She opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. At this moment, the sound of footsteps was suddenly heard. A slightly hoarse male voice suppressed his surprise and said breathlessly, is that you? Chapter 270. Why did he come? Qin Yining was slightly surprised. She put away the plum blossom net that had been washed clean and went forward to bow. This subject greets the emperor. Ji-yun, Bing Tang, and Xiao Lu also followed suit and bowed. Yin was sweating profusely as he leaned against a small tree and panted heavily. He waved his hand at Qin Yining and said, Rise, there's no need to be so courteous. Qin Yining stood and respectfully bowed her head as she asked, Why has the emperor come here? Yin panted for a while. When his breathing stabilized, he said, I heard that your home was invaded by a mob and your family members disappeared. Jin was very worried and ordered people to investigate. Only then did Jin know that you and your family had moved here. Looking up at the white walls and black tiles of Ningyuan, Yin remembered that this place was given to Qin Yining by Pang Xiao. He frowned unhappily, but he couldn't blame Qin Yining for anything. After all, she was just a weak woman. Also, if she didn't make arrangements early and brought her family Qin up the mountain, her family members would have been injured by the mob. Yin laughed at himself. As the emperor, he was starving all day. He couldn't give Qin Yining anything. What could he use to pursue her? Could it be that he could fill his stomach with paintings and calligraphy? You can all leave. Jin has something to say to Xuanzu. Yan's mood had calmed down, and he waved his hand at the people beside him. Eunuch Lu and the guards bowed and left. Xiao Lu, Ji-yun, and Bing Tang had no choice but to leave the space for the two of them. Yin leaned against the tree and carefully looked at the person he thought about day and night. She had lost a lot of weight. Her small face was the size of a palm, but it made her eyes look bigger and brighter. Her nose and lips were very pretty, even though she was wearing a coarse dress and her hair was simply tied into a long braid. Her lack of makeup showed her natural beauty. She couldn't be compared to those beauties who wore makeup. Yin found that he still liked her. When he saw her, his heart would still throb. He smiled helplessly. Now that the country was about to fall, he actually had the leisure to think about these things. It was just that the past few days had been too painful, and he had nowhere to vent the pent-up frustrations in his heart. Although Dukan Gwagongli Mian was the commander-in-chief, he avoided the battle and repeatedly requested to restart the peace talks. His words actually had the intention of persuading them to surrender. How could the Yan's dignity as an emperor be trampled on like this? However, the current situation did not allow him to do so. Yin tiredly sat down on the floor and said, You sit down too. Save some energy and chat with me. Seeing Yin like this, Qin Yining lowered his guard a little. He found a rock 3 steps away from him and sat down. Yin raised his head and looked at the leaves that were being blown by the wind. He leaned against the tree trunk and closed his eyes. After a long time, he slowly said, Did you know that retired emperor disappeared yesterday? Qin Yining looked at Yin in surprise. Yin tiredly said, The eunuch who delivered the food to retired emperor found that the food was not eaten, so he thought that something had happened to retired emperor. However, after searching the entire palace, he could not find him. A perfectly fine person just disappeared into thin air. Your Majesty, do you believe that? Qin Yining frowned. What? Yu Yin looked at Qin Yining. Qin Yining said, "A perfectly fine person would not disappear into thin air. If there was no one outside who helped retired emperor escape, then it means that there is a secret passage in the palace." Secret passage? Yu Yin sat up straight. How did you think of this? Because when we captured Chao Guizhong, it was said that we found a secret passage in his residence. A crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. How could these old foxes not leave a way out for themselves? Chao Guizhong and retired emperor had interacted for a lifetime. No matter how muddle-headed retired emperor was, he was still very scheming. Even Chao Guizhong had a secret passage, so retired emperor would not be unprepared. Yu Qian's reaction was slow, but he quickly figured out the crux of the matter. He said, "You are right. Why didn't we think of it?" He immediately turned around and called for an imperial bodyguard to come over. He whispered a few words into his ear. That imperial bodyguard bowed and quickly retreated. Yu Yin stared blankly at a place. He leaned against the tree trunk and sat in a daze for a while before saying, "It seems that retired emperor wants to take that large sum of money to Southern Yin." Qin Yining smiled and did not say anything. If retired emperor took that large sum of money to Southern Yin and wanted Lu Yingshi and the new emperor of Southern Yin to recognize him as the former emperor, then he was too foolish and naive. They would accept the money, but retired emperor's life could not be guaranteed. It was not easy for him to sit in that high and mighty position. Even if Southern Yin was only a small country formed by combining a few provinces and counties in Dian, its area was still as large as when Nation and Goguryeo combined. No one would give up on it. While Qin Yining was silent, Yu Yin had already thought of many things. Finally, he closed his eyes and leaned against the tree trunk. He faintly said, "It seems that the heavens are not helping us. Li Mian, that old thing, has been persuading us all day long. We trusted him and even conferred his daughter as the empress. However, he is lazy and greedy for life, afraid of death. After leading the army for such a long time, he has only attacked once. And that was because he fell into the enemy's trap. Not to mention the loss of 20,000 soldiers and horses. If Grand Preceptor Qin did not rescue him in time, Li Mian, that old thing, would have died outside. The heavens are not helping us in Dian. Natural disasters and man-made disasters have caused our talents to wither." Qin Yining now understood why the emperor came here. He was filled with depression and had nowhere to vent, so he came to find her to vent. At the same time, he already had thoughts of retreating and wanted to negotiate. However, in the current situation, negotiating was simply a dream. Qin Yining did not mind pouring a bucket of cold water on Yu Yin. The peace talks that Dukan mentioned are actually not appropriate. Oh! Yu Yin looked at Qin Yining with hopeful eyes. Qin Yining said, "If we want to negotiate, then we need to have the same status as the other countries. We also need to have conditions that can satisfy both sides. Only then can it be called a peace talk. To say something that will boost the morale of others and diminish our own prestige. Dezhou currently has an overwhelming advantage. Why do they have to negotiate with us? Even if they agree to negotiate, what conditions can we offer them that can move them?" This sentence instantly made Yu Yin feel as if he had been plunged into an ice cave. Originally, he still had a bit of hope in his heart, but at this moment, there was nothing left. That's right, he was now a stray dog. Why did they have to negotiate with him? However, if there was no hope, why did Dukan try to persuade him again and again? Could it be that old thing Li Mian? I'm afraid that persuading us to negotiate is fake. Persuading us to surrender is real. He wants us to be disloyal and unfilial. How can we face the Yuchi family's ancestors? He wants us to be the ruler of a destroyed country. Yu Yin thought about the Emperor Emeritus who had disappeared with a large sum of money. He thought about what the Emperor Emeritus had said to him. He then thought about the faces of the people in the imperial court who were in danger. His heart ached as if someone was stabbing it with a needle. So, what if we were born in the wrong time? Your Majesty, please do not be too sad. As long as we are alive, there is hope. Qin Yining looked down and softly persuaded. Chapter 271. When Qin Yining saw Yu Qian's expression, she knew that he had misunderstood. She just wanted to persuade Yu Qian to get over it and not hurt his body. However, Yu Qian seemed to have thought of something else. Your Majesty, this subject's daughter feels that nothing is more important than the emperor's health. Qin Yining could only kneel and say softly, "You are the true ruler of Dian. Your existence is the reason why we continue to persevere." Yu Qian focused his gaze on Qin Yining. His gaze gradually softened from suspicion, but then he gave a bitter laugh. How can Jin be worthy of being the ruler of a country in this state? How can I be worthy of being the reason why the people continue to persevere? It's because Zhen is here that the people have to suffer like this. When he came out now, he didn't even dare to use the emperor's ceremonial guard. It wasn't just because everyone was too hungry to put on a show for him. It was also because he was afraid that if he came out in his dragon robe, he would be eaten alive by the people filled with hatred. Yu Qian asked himself several times, was it right or wrong for him to continue to fight against the people of Dezhou? Now that there was already the southern Yin in the south, his country had already been divided into two. The reason why he was clenching his teeth and not relenting was because he didn't want to be the ruler of a fallen country and be recorded as a shameful event in the history books. He didn't want to be ashamed to meet his ancestors 100 years later. But when he saw the bark of the trees in the capital being stripped and the children curled up in a corner, he felt that he was the most selfish person in the world. For his dignity, he was sacrificing the lives of countless innocent people. Stand up. Jin knows how loyal your family Qin is. Yu Qian shook his head with a bitter smile. It's just that Jin is really confused right now. Qin Yining stood up and sat back down on the stone. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. She understood that talking about court politics would cause one to burn oneself. Yu Qian sat there in a daze for a long time. Qin Yining sat there with him in a daze. By the time Yu Qian came back to his senses, there were already sounds of men talking in the direction of Ning Garden. Yu Qian looked at Qin Yining questioningly. Qin Yining explained, perhaps the people who went into the mountains to hunt and dig for wild vegetables have returned. The Yu Qian smiled and said, you're smart. You're with so many people living near the mountains and rivers. You can take care of each other. He supported himself against the tree trunk and stood up. He patted the dust off his body and said, little Lu, here. Eunuch Lu, who was standing in the distance, immediately came over. Your Majesty, give it to fourth young Mississippi, yes. Eunuch Lu immediately called for the imperial bodyguards who had just escorted them over. Only then did Qin Yining realize that the imperial bodyguards were all carrying baskets on their backs. The two imperial bodyguards put down the baskets. Inside the baskets were a bag of fist-sized black biscuits that were commonly eaten in the army. There was also a bag of medicinal herbs that had already been packed. Yu Qian was a bit embarrassed. He smiled self-mockingly and said, This emperor knows that you have a lot of people here. This emperor was afraid that you would have starved long ago. Unfortunately, this emperor has gold and silver, but cannot buy food. Don't be disdainful of these. There isn't much dried food, so you should eat with the people around you first. You can take the rest back. As for the medicinal herbs, this is the medicine that this emperor ordered people to prepare to nourish your blood and body. It seems that your body hasn't fully recovered yet. Don't be too foolish and give everything to others. In any case, you should at least eat a few meals. Look at how thin you've become. Yu Qian sighed and shook his head. He was the emperor of a country, but he couldn't even let the woman he liked eat a full meal. No one could be in such a predicament. Qin Yining very gratefully knelt down and bowed. Your Majesty's kindness in providing timely assistance. This subject's daughter will engrave it in her heart. Thank you, Your Majesty. Quickly get up. Seeing that she looked so weak from hunger that she could be blown away by the wind, her small face was deathly pale, and her lips had no color. Yu Qian felt a wave of pain in his heart. Stay here and eat a flatbread first. Qin Yining looked at him with a bit of surprise. Yu Qian continued, Your servant girls are quite loyal to you. Even at this time, they didn't abandon you and leave. Call them over and eat a full meal together. This is an imperial edict. This emperor will watch you eat. You can only go back after you've finished eating. Qin Yining lowered her eyes and thanked him emotionally. She then called Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and Qiu Lu over. The four of them each took a hard flatbread and began to eat. Yu Qiyin looks at Qin Yining, who is like a little hamster. The mixed flour pancake, which is hard and cold, tastes like the imperial cuisine in her mouth. Yu Qiyan's nose twitches and tears almost fall down. This couldn't continue. If this continued, all the citizens of the capital would be buried with his selfishness. When Qin Huaiyun opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. When he looked out of the window, all he could see was darkness. It was probably nighttime. He didn't immediately get up, but calmly recalled what had happened today. After eating a bowl of thin porridge, he felt dizzy and wanted to sleep. Then he fell asleep on the table. When he woke up, he was already here. It seemed like the person who brought him here didn't want to kill him. At least, they didn't want to kill him yet. You're awake? Just as Qin Huaiyuan was letting his imagination run wild, he heard the door creak open. A tall figure carried a tray with a big bowl on it. The person who came in later carried a candlestick. Because the candlelight was behind him, Qin Huaiyuan didn't see who it was until the person behind him put the candlestick on the table. Qin Huaiyuan sat up. His expression didn't change as he looked at the steaming hot Yangchun noodles on the table. Then, he glanced at Pang Xiao, who was wearing patched clothes and dressed like a disaster victim. He suddenly sneered, "So it's you. What? Did you bring this old man here to treat me to a meal?" Pang Xiao didn't care about Qin Huaiyuan's sarcastic words. He still bowed properly and said, "Father-in-law, this son-in-law was rude. This time, I really acted rashly. But if I let you know in advance, it would be inconvenient for me to act. Secondly, I didn't want to frame you for being unfaithful. So, this son-in-law used the medicine rashly. Please forgive me." Qin Huaiyuan's eyebrows twitched when he heard this. Father-in-law? Son-in-law? With the current situation of the two countries, how could the two families have such fate? This old man doesn't deserve it. Wang Yi, please be careful with your words. This old man's daughter is as pure as ice and as pure as jade. She has never been involved with anyone. What do you think of this old man's daughter by speaking like this? Pang Xiao wiped his sweat and said in his heart, "It's over. This time I've offended my father-in-law." They are indeed father and daughter. When they are fierce, they're equally difficult to deal with. Father-in-law, please don't be angry. It's just that Sister E and I have already made a lifelong commitment. In this life, I will marry no one but her, and she will marry no one but me. Ridiculous. Where do you get the confidence that she will marry no one but you? Qin Huaiyun stood up angrily and flicked his sleeves. If it were in the past, she might have been moved by your actions. But after she saw with her own eyes those people who swapped children for food and experienced hell, do you still expect her to still not care? My daughter is a human, not a saint. Where do you get the nerve to be so confident in yourself that you can do whatever you want? Chapter 272. Father-in-law, please calm down. Pang Xiao saw that Qin Huaiyuan was enraged. So, he didn't say anything. He knelt down without any hesitation. He didn't care about his status as a prince. Moreover, he was the commander-in-chief of the great Zhou's tiger army. Father-in-law, if you are angry, you can reprimand me however you want, but please don't say such hurtful words. I know that Sister E will definitely suffer greatly in this war. Not only Sister E, but the people will also suffer greatly. That is why I forced you to come here today. Father-in-law, you have eyes and ears. How can you not know that your son-in-law has no choice? You feel sorry for the people and Sister E. You can scold me however you want, but please don't say that I don't cherish her. I feel like my heart is being twisted by a knife. Pang Xiao knelt with his head down. The more he spoke, the more depressed he became. In fact, he couldn't blame Qin Huaiyuan for being angry with him. When he heard Huzi describe the tragic situation in Jingdu, he couldn't help but feel distressed. When he thought about how Qin Yining was in such an environment, with his injuries not yet healed, and he had to starve all day, his heart ached. What's more, Qin Huayuan was in such a situation all day. Qin Huayuan looked down at Pang Xiao. For a moment, he didn't know what to do with him. From the perspective of the country, this person was a sinner who wanted to trample on Dian. But from a personal point of view, this person was an outstanding young man. He was both literate and martial, and had both talent and appearance. He was sincere to his daughter. Moreover, in terms of planning and conquering, not only did he display his strategy, but he also had a benevolent heart that loved the people. This could be seen from the fact that he had resisted the imperial edict and refused to massacre the city. Qin Huayuan sat down tiredly. He rubbed his forehead and said, "How is Xihua City now?" Pang Xiao was smart. When he heard Qin Huayuan ask this, he knew that his father-in-law wasn't so angry that he didn't want to acknowledge him. He wanted to give him a chance. Pang Xiao immediately said, "Everything is fine in Xihua City. But I heard that 9 out of 10 houses in Xihua City are empty. Your tiger army has killed all the people there and hung their heads on high poles like lanterns." Qin Huayuan sneered. "Are you trying to fool me? Father-in-law, please understand. That was just a tactic to disturb the enemy. In fact, it was to save money for a wife, but Pang Xiao would never say that." Seeing this, Huzi, who was kneeling beside him, also explained, "Master Qin, I'm sorry. My family's Wang Yi indeed did not indiscriminately kill the innocent. Those people who were beheaded in front of Xihua City Gate were originally criminals in the city." After Wang Yi entered the city, he investigated both openly and secretly and recorded down the names of those rich and heartless people whom the common people called Flayed Skin, King of Hell, and so on. Once their crimes were verified, they were severely punished. Now you're saying that you're here to uphold justice. Qin Huayuan's anger had subsided a lot, but he still felt awkward looking at Pang Xiao. He simply turned his face to the side and refused to look at him. Pang Xiao heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. He thought that he would be able to keep his identity as his son-in-law. So he kowtowed again and said, "Father-in-law, this son-in-law wouldn't dare to do such a heartless thing. But a war is a war. We are standing on different sides. So there will always be a time when we can't control ourselves." Pang Xiao straightened his body as he observed Qin Huayuan's expression. When he saw that Qin Huayuan was not displeased, he continued, just like in father-in-law's heart, "Could it be that you have long given up on defending the city for the sake of the common people?" Qin Huayuan's heart shook when he heard this. He closed his eyes and sighed softly. On the one hand, it was whether the Dian royal family could continue to rule this territory. On the other hand, the common people in the territory sacrificed themselves for the power of the superior. How could he not have such thoughts? However, he was a muddle-headed person in the end, so he could not be the one to stand out. "Get up." As Wang Yi, the commander-in-chief of the army, "How can you kneel when you see this old man? Even if I don't kneel, you won't be appeased. If I put on airs when I see you, how can we continue to talk about this?" Pang Xiao cursed in his heart, but in the end, he breathed a sigh of relief. He stood up and brought the noodles over, saying with a smile, "Father-in-law, you've been unconscious for a day and haven't eaten yet. Eat the noodles first, and then we can continue talking." Qin Huayuan did not have much of an appetite. After being hungry for a long time, his stomach seemed to have become smaller, so he did not have much of an appetite. However, looking at the noodles that Pang Xiao brought over, the broth was clear, the noodles were thin, and the noodles were evenly distributed. There were also green vegetables and green onions scattered on top, and the fragrance was very appetizing. Qin Huayuan could not let Wang Yi, who was from Dezhou, carry a bowl for him all the time. So he took the bowl and took a sip of the broth with a spoon. It tasted fresh and salty, and it could not help but arouse his appetite. He simply picked up his chopsticks and ate. When Pang Xiao saw that his father-in-law was willing to eat the noodles he cooked, he felt a little relieved. When Qin Huayuan finished eating, Huzi brought over a cup of tea and said, "Old Master Qin, please enjoy." Qin Huayuan rinsed his mouth and said, "The noodles are cooked well. If father-in-law thinks it's good, then it's the good fortune of these noodles. Sister Yi also likes to eat the noodles I cook." When Pang Xiao thought of Qin eating, the smile on his face softened a little. You cooked it? Yes, my son-in-law's family ran a restaurant before he joined the army. I like to cook, so I learned a few tricks from my grandfather and the chef he hired. Qin Huaiyuan lowered his eyes and pondered. Pang Xiao had already expressed his sincerity very clearly, so he could not continue to pretend to be a guest. Firstly, it would not benefit the two countries, and secondly, he was afraid that his daughter would be wronged. What if Sister Yi still had feelings for this brat? He could not interfere with their good fortune. Qin Huaiyuan stood up and said solemnly, "Just now, we were speaking in a private capacity. Now let's talk about official business. Wang Yi, did you invite me here today for something important?" Pang Xiao secretly praised his father-in-law's quick-wittedness. He treated the situation just now as a personal grudge, and it would not affect the relationship between the two countries at all. He was also happy to see this. He took out a thick letter from his bosom and said, "Grand Preceptor Qin, I invited you here in private today to find a way to survive for the people here. Please take a look at this letter." Qin Huaiyuan took it curiously. At first glance, the handwriting on the letter changed color. Qin Huaiyuan had a photographic memory. He could distinguish the handwriting of his colleagues. The handwriting on this letter was clearly Duke Ongua's, Li Mian's. Thinking about Duke Ongua's attitude toward the war, he had already guessed the contents of the letter. He hurriedly opened the letter and read 10 lines at a time. This was a letter of allegiance. The general content was that as long as Prince Zhongshuan said a word and agreed on a time, Duke Ongua would be willing to open the city gates and welcome the Tiger Army into the capital. He was also willing to cut off the head of Grand Preceptor Qin Huaiyuan and offer it to Prince Zhongshuan to avenge Prince Zhongshuan and express his sincerity. Most importantly, at the end of the letter of allegiance, there was a long list of names. Every name on this list was written in blood. The handwriting of each name was different, and there was a handprint behind each name. It actually included 90% of Dian's military generals and nearly half of the civil officials. Qin Huaiyuan smiled sadly. How could he fight this war? He couldn't fight at all. I understand. Qin Huaiyuan calmly put the letter back into the envelope. This official still has to present this letter to the emperor. Pang Xiao nodded and said, "Don't worry, Grand Preceptor Qin. This king guarantees that he will not kill a single person." He was guaranteeing that he would not kill the people. He was also guaranteeing that he would not kill Qin Huaiyuan. Chapter 273. Pang Zhao's people were very efficient. In the wee hours of the morning, they safely sent Qin Huaiyuan back to the city. Qin Huaiyuan stepped into the morning light and went to see Yu Qiyin without hesitation. He wasn't a person who would waste his life on an insignificant problem. Knowing that the situation was hopeless, he still wanted to die to prove his sincerity. After surviving under the Emperor Emeritus for so many years and experiencing so many ups and downs, Qin Huaiyuan had changed from a simple-minded person full of ideals to a person who knew how to think for his family. Since he knew that he couldn't defeat De Zhou, it was better to think about how to obtain the most benefits for the emperor. Yu Qiyin was in a very good mood today. Perhaps it was because he had seen Qin Yining yesterday. Even now, when he closed his eyes, he could still remember Qin Yining's docile appearance when he sent him down the mountain. Or perhaps it was because after seeing Qin Yining, some of the stubbornness in his mind had finally been shattered. Yu Qiyin felt as if he had been stripped of his heavy shackles. His entire being felt lighter from the bottom of his heart. "Your Majesty, Grand Preceptor Qin requests an audience. Quickly invite him in." Yu Qiyin had something to say to Qin Huaiyuan, so his voice was somewhat urgent. Not long after, Qin Huaiyuan quickly walked into the imperial study. He bowed and said, "This subject greets the emperor. May the emperor be in good health. You may rise. Please sit." Yu Qiyin had a smile on his face. Qin Huaiyuan thanked him and sat down in the official's hat chair that was brought over by the palace eunuchs. He said with a smile, "Looking at the emperor's expression, it seems like there's something joyous today." Yu Qiyin smiled and said, "It's not that there's anything joyous. It's just that I've thought through some things. I feel much lighter in my heart. You came at the right time today. Even if you didn't come, Zhen would have summoned you." Qin Huaiyuan saw that Yu Qi Yin seemed to be very interested, so he cooperated and asked, "What did the emperor think through?" Yu Qi Yin stood up and sternly said, "Yesterday, I went out for a patrol in plain clothes. I walked around the city for a long time and saw the tragic state of the city." Qin Huaiyuan saw that the emperor's brows were tightly knitted, and he couldn't hide the pain in his heart. He hurriedly knelt down and said, "This humble subject is incompetent and can't share your majesty's burdens." "No, you've done very well." The Yu Qi Yin helped Qin Huaiyuan up and said, "Grand Preceptor Qin has done a lot for me and the Dayan people. We can only blame the heavens for not protecting us. We didn't have any advantage at all." Yu Qi Yin smiled bitterly and said, "When Imperial Father handed the throne to me, it wasn't because he valued my talent, but because he didn't have anyone else to inherit the throne, so he wanted me to take the blame for him. He had a large amount of money and threw an empty shell to me. It was nothing more than wanting to leave some capital for a comeback in the future. Once the Dayan dynasty was defeated, he wouldn't want to be the humiliating emperor of a defeated country. At that time, the history books would only record that I was the last emperor of the Dayan." At this point, Yu Qi Yin closed his eyes and clenched his fists. He said, "To be honest, my heart is full of resentment. I've never received any care from Imperial Father. As I slowly grew up, Imperial Father didn't look at me with the love of a father for his son, but with a deep fear. I know. He's afraid that I'll take away his position. The care he gives me is not as much as Imperial Uncle. Sometimes I wish that the Dayan country was ruled by Imperial Uncle. Perhaps then I wouldn't have reached the end so quickly. But it's too late." Yu Qi Yin's back was facing Qin Huaiyuan. He didn't want Qin Huaiyuan to see his cowardly tears. However, his thick nasal voice had already revealed the fact that he was crying as an emperor and as a man. Qin Huaiyuan knelt on the ground again and quietly listened to Yu Qi Yan's confession. He also felt a wave of sorrow in his heart. When the Emperor Emeritus, that incapable ruler, was in power, he wasn't just afraid of Yu Qi Yin. He was afraid of everyone. Yu Qi Yin wasn't the only one who felt pain. As a subject, he had dedicated most of his life to the imperial court. Wasn't he still played by the Emperor Emeritus in the palm of his hand? If he wanted to kill him, he would be killed. If he wanted to, he would be praised. He could understand Yu Qi Yan's pain. This was because he also felt the same pain. The pain of not being able to fulfill his ambitions was probably not much worse than the pain of not being able to get his father's attention, right? When I went out yesterday, I saw the scene of children being swapped for food. Yu Qi Yan's voice started to tremble. This Jin saw with my own eyes an old woman in ragged clothes nibbling on a child's hand that was roasted until it was half cooked. This Jin really wished that she could kill herself. I didn't want to be the ruler of a fallen country, so I refused to admit my failure. I gritted my teeth and persevered until now. However, for the sake of my laughable self-esteem, innocent people were sacrificed. Grand Preceptor Qin, I was wrong. I was wrong from the beginning. Yu Qi Yin turned around. There were tears on his face, but his eyes were unprecedentedly firm. From the beginning, I shouldn't have plunged the people into the abyss of suffering for my own selfish reasons. As the emperor, I can't seek happiness for the people. Instead, I have to use the people as a tool to build my status. How am I different from my father? We're both selfish and fatuous. Your Majesty, you've already done very well. Qin Huaiyuan persuaded. If you had ascended the throne 10 years earlier, Dayan wouldn't have perished. When you took over, some things were already irreversible. You can't be blamed for this. Qin Huaiyuan's persuasion was actually exaggerated. After all, Yu Qi Yan's talent was limited. However, this sentence was the most timely affirmation for Yu Qi Yin when he was at his most self-denying. Yu Qi Yin felt that as long as there was one person who could understand him, then he wouldn't feel so wronged when he was the ruler of a fallen country and saved the lives of the remaining people in the city. Grand Preceptor Qin, thank you. Yu Qi Yin smiled, but his tears flowed like a spring. He said with a heavy nasal voice, I can't be selfish anymore. I can't let everyone be buried with my throne. I've decided to surrender to Dezhou. Your Majesty. Qin Huaiyuan's voice choked with emotion. Although he knew this would be the result, once this decision was made, the country that Qin Huaiyuan had spent most of his life defending would be destroyed. At the same time, the efforts and youth he had invested in it would be destroyed, as well as the great dreams he had when he was young and full of mettle. He was very sad and also very helpless. However, he wasn't a person who would be emotional. What was done was done. There was nothing he could do to reverse the situation, so he had to think of another way out. Your Majesty, Qin Huaiyuan wiped his tears and took out the envelope with trembling hands. He said, "This official woke up early this morning and found this thing next to my pillow. When I opened it, it was really... Your Majesty, this official doesn't dare to speak rashly. Your Majesty, please take a look." Yu Qiyin was startled when he heard this. He hesitantly took the letter. After he opened it and carefully read it, his thin and pale face was completely devoid of color. Although he had already decided to surrender, the feeling of making his own decision and surrendering after being betrayed was really different. These people are really good. Good. They are my good officials and my good father-in-law. The emperor looked up to the sky and howled. He wailed, "The generals have all rebelled. Half of the civil officials have rebelled. Even my father-in-law has betrayed me. My country has already fallen. What's the point of fighting? What else can I do other than surrender?" Qin Huaiyuan was overcome with grief. He also closed his eyes and cried. The ruler and official hugged each other and wept bitterly. At this time, neither of them noticed that outside the imperial study, Empress Li Yinyan had quietly retreated. She gave eunuch Lu, who was by the emperor's side, a look and quickly left. Chapter 274. After Li Yinyan left the imperial study, she immediately called for her most trusted maidservant to come over and whispered to her, "Hurry up and go see my father. Tell him that the emperor already knows that he contacted the officials to prove his loyalty to the great Zhou dynasty." Grand Preceptor Qin just met the emperor in the imperial study and gave the proof of allegiance to the emperor. After the emperor saw it, he was furious and told him to take precautions. "Go quickly." The maid was so scared that her face turned pale. She quickly nodded and ran out. Li Yinyan lost all her strength and fell into a round chair. If the matter was exposed, what would the emperor think of their Li family? How would he treat her? As soon as this thought appeared, Li Yinyan took a deep breath and confidently suppressed it. The country was about to fall. The emperor didn't even have enough food to eat. How would he have the strength to deal with the Li family? The country was in danger and needed people. If the emperor dealt with the Li family, wouldn't he be afraid of being alone and without help in the future? Thinking of this, Li Yinyan's worried heart relaxed. What Li Yinyan didn't know was that after Qin Huaiyuan left the imperial study, eunuch Lu told Yu Qiyin in detail about Li Yinyan's visit. Yu Qiyin sneered. "You really think that Zhen is a soft persimmon that can be easily bullied? I just think that they're a bit useful." Eunuch Lu said, "Everything is under consideration, Your Majesty. This servant has absolutely nothing to worry about." Yu Qiyin thought for a bit, then called Eunuch Lu to his side and whispered a few words in his ear. After Eunuch Lu heard this, he immediately bowed and left to handle the matter. Percent at the same time, Li Yinyan's maid had already sent a message to Guogong Gong as quickly as possible. When Guogong Gong heard this news, his entire body stiffened. His mind was in a mess, and he couldn't say a word for a long time. The few aides beside him also furrowed their brows, their faces gloomy. "Guogong Gong, what should we do? If the emperor finds out about our joint efforts, I'm afraid that the emperor will be furious." "That's right, High Duke. Your reputation can't be ruined at this time. We have to think of a countermeasure." Hearing the discussions of his advisors, Duke An gradually calmed down. He sneered, "What are you afraid of?" When he stood up, there was no longer any trace of panic on Duke An's face. He sneered and said, "Now that things have come to this, what is there to be afraid of?" In the end, this old man's name wasn't the only one signed on the Pledge of Allegiance. As the saying goes, the law cannot punish the masses. Even if His Majesty wants to punish me, Could it be that he can kill this old man and all of the court's generals? Without this old man, can His Majesty find another person to lead the troops? Without generals, how is he going to fight a war? Hearing Dukin's words, the advisors felt a bit more at ease. After careful analysis, all the ministers in the court were about to starve to death. The emperor was in power, but he couldn't even feed his ministers. If he wanted to punish them, what position did he have to punish them? You're right, High Duke. A few of the aides also relaxed. Dukin stroked his white beard. The sharp eagle eyes on his square face narrowed. I didn't think that Sheen Brat would have the ability to obtain this old man's pledge of allegiance. He even took the initiative to present it to His Majesty and complain about this old man. It seems that this old fox's age isn't wasted. This old man has underestimated him. Hearing this, one of the advisors laughed and said, to say that he is loyal to Qin Huaiyuan is nothing more than that. He is just a shameless person fishing for fame. He took the initiative to file a complaint because he wanted to gain benefits from both sides. Not only could he expose the Duke in front of the Emperor, but he could also gain benefits from the great Zhou dynasty. That pledge of allegiance, could it have flown over on its own? Wasn't it because he somehow got in touch with the Zhou? It's clear that although he said righteously that he couldn't give up, in reality, he already had thoughts of surrendering. Dukin nodded in agreement. He believed that his talent wasn't inferior to Qin Huaiyuan's. However, everyone with the surname Qin was famous everywhere. There wasn't a single person in the world who didn't know Qin Huaiyuan. But how many people knew Dukin, Li Mian? The two of them had different ideas. For example, during the defense of the city, Princess and Zhang Wenzhong wanted to win and secretly advocated surrendering. However, Qin Huaiyuan advocated holding on and not giving up. As a result, Qin Huaiyuan's position went against the interests of Duke An's faction. More importantly, of their two daughters, one was the emperor's legitimate empress, but she didn't receive the emperor's love. The other was truly loved by the emperor. Even though he was forced to become a layman, the emperor still couldn't forget her. With all these factors added together, it was impossible for Nguigong and Qin Huaiyuan to ever get along. Currently, in Dian, Dukin was being suppressed by Qin Huaiyuan. When de Zhou's secret emissary came to secretly contact Dukin, he said that the emperor of the Zhou dynasty had promised that if they surrendered in Dian, all surrendered officials would be given preferential treatment and wouldn't bury any talents. In other words, if they went to de Zhou, they would still be officials. However, if this situation continued, even if they went to de Zhou, Dukin would still be suppressed by the world-famous Qin Huaiyuan. Why? It was already like this in Dian. If he went to de Zhou, would he, Li Mian, still be suppressed? Thinking of this, Duke An's eyes gradually became cold. We can't let the family Qin go to de Zhou alive. Didn't that person from de Zhou order us to secretly get rid of the family Qin Huaiyuan? Otherwise, we'll use this matter to wipe out the family Qin Huaiyuan and the family Qin Huaiyuan. Hearing this, the aides all became excited. A few of them began to think and help Duke and come up with a plan. The heavy rain in the early morning cooled down the raging heat of the autumn. The people in Ning Garden were all busily preparing utensils to store water. Thinking that perhaps after this nourishment, the wild vegetables and fruits on the mountain would grow a little faster, everyone's faces relaxed a little, which was rare to see. Qin Yining was busy with the work at hand with the Sun clan and whispering to each other when someone came in with a message. Benefactor, there's a master outside the gate. He says he's one of your father's men and that your father has something important to discuss with you, so he's come to see you. Qin Yining was stunned. His father hadn't come to the mountain for a long time. The two sides had lost contact for a month. Qin Yining was also worried about Qin Huaiyuan's situation. As soon as he heard that his father's man had come, he immediately said, "Thank you. I understand." Qin Yining put down the pot in his hand and said with a smile, "Mother, I'll go out and take a look. Perhaps father wants to talk to me about something." The Sun clan smiled reluctantly and nodded. "Go ahead. Since your father didn't say he wanted to talk to me, I won't go. I think it's Chi Tai. Help me ask about your father's situation in detail." Qin Yining naturally knew that the Sun clan was sad. Because ever since Qin Huaiyuan went to defend the city, Chao Yuqing had always been by his side to protect him. How could the Sun clan not be jealous? Qin Yining didn't want to comment on his father's private life, so he just smiled and said, I understand. I'll be back soon. Go ahead. I know you two have a lot of secrets. Chapter 275. When Qin Yining and Ji Yun arrived in front of Ning Garden with an old oil paper umbrella, they saw Chi Tai, who was wearing a sapphire blue cotton robe and holding an oil paper umbrella. Seeing Qin Yining come out, Chi Tai quickly put down the umbrella and saluted. 4th Mississippi, quickly get up. Uncle is an old man who has been with my father for many years. You must not salute me like this. Chi Tai's surname was In. But Chi Tai refused to listen. After saluting respectfully, he smiled and said, Marquis ordered this lowly one to come and deliver a message to you. He said that he has something important to tell you. Marquis has been summoned by His Majesty to the palace to talk and is not free. I'm afraid that he will only be free at night. Therefore, he specially ordered this lowly one to come and tell you to wait at the foot of the mountain tonight. Marquis will come to see you. Qin Yining nodded and said with a smile, I know. Did father say what it is? Why can't he take the time to come up the mountain? Old madam and everyone in the family miss father very much. He's really too busy. To tell you the truth, this lowly one has been following master around. These days, this lowly one has been so busy that my feet hit the back of my head. As Chi Tai spoke, he looked around. Seeing that there were no outsiders, he lowered his voice and said, I'm afraid that His Majesty already has the intention to surrender. When it comes to such a big matter, it naturally involves many things. Marquis has been discussing with His Majesty all day long. Where would he find the time? Qin Yining nodded in understanding and sighed. It's really difficult for my father. I'll have to trouble uncle and to take care of my father and remind him to pay attention to his rest. Yes, this lowly one will naturally pay attention. How is my father's health recently? How is concubine Chao? Qin Yining was concerned about Qin Huaiyuan and Chao Yuqing again. Chi Tai said with a smile, although master is hungry and full in the army, at least it's better than outside. Concubine Chao has been disguising herself as a man and staying by master's side to protect him. The two of them are like friends. They don't talk much, but they have a tacit understanding. Chi Tai's words were telling Qin Yining in a roundabout way that Qin Huaiyuan and Chao Yuqing still had not done the deed of husband and wife. Chi Tai was someone who stayed by his father's side all day, so he naturally wouldn't be wrong. Qin Yining secretly sighed for his mother's sake and said with a smile, I know. Thank you. I will wait at the foot of the mountain tonight. All right, then this lowly one will take his leave. I still have to return to the Marquis' side to listen to his orders. Qin Yining watched Qin's back then. It seems that His Majesty has decided to surrenders. And Yining, then, Yun said. Ji Yun said, although I shouldn't say this. After this servant heard that His Majesty has decided to surrender, this servant's heart was really relieved. Qin Yining said with understanding, I understand. Let's not talk about anything else. At the very least, once the war is over, there will be no need to besiege the city. We will also have a way to survive. As for the country's interests, it's not something you and I can consider. That's right. Moreover, once the war is over, Wang Yi will definitely come to look for Mississippi. Miss has suffered so much during this period of time. Wang Yi must be very distressed. Ji Yun thought about how much importance Pang Shao attached to Qin Yining. Now, she could only imagine when the two of them met in the future. As a bystander, she felt that the scene of their reunion would definitely be very moving. Qin Yining touched his burning ears. Although his expression didn't change, his heart was inexplicably excited. Although this kind of excitement shouldn't come when the Dian imperial court was about to be destroyed. However, Qin Yining felt that the country's foundation had already been hollowed out by the Emperor Emeritus's torment during his reign. Even if he didn't want to admit it, Qin Yining also knew that this kind of imperial court wouldn't last for long. Now that he knew that the Yuchi Yin had the intention to surrender, Qin Yining felt a burst of light in his heart. When the two of them entered Ningyuan, they saw that the Sun Clan had been waiting for them for a long time. Qin Yining went to the Sun Clan to tell them about Qin Yining's intentions. Then, he emphasized the situation of Qin Huaiyuan and Chao Yuqing when they were defending the city. The Sun Clan's eyebrows relaxed when they heard this. Their worried hearts were also at ease. The irritation from the recent days of hunger also disappeared without a trace. They beamed with joy and asked, "Sister E, you can't swindle people. How could I swindle you?" This is what Qin Yining said just now. He follows father around all day, so he must know more than us. Unless Qin Yining is lying to me, I guarantee that there is nothing going on between father and concubine Chao. The Sun Clan's face was a little red. She felt a little embarrassed when her daughters saw how jealous she was. She coughed and said, "Little girl, what are you saying? Is your mother the kind of person who is easily jealous?" "Of course not. I'm just worried for nothing." Qin Yining stuck out her tongue. The Sun Clan couldn't help but laugh. Although the people in the courtyard were starving, they were in a good mood after hearing the Sun Clan's and Qin Yining's happy laughter. Their irritation and fear also settled down on such a rainy day. Qin Yining spent the day as usual. When it was evening, he brought Ji Yun and Bing Tang out of Ningyuan. As soon as he stepped out, he saw Mu Jinghu, who was as thin as a stick and dressed in a light blue robe, standing with his hands behind his back. "Are you going out?" Mu Jinghu's delicate features were sharper because of his thinness. His eyes were very clear. Qin Yining nodded and smiled. "My father is looking for me. Then I'll follow you in the dark." Qin Yining said guiltily, "If young Master Mu is tired, you can rest on the mountain. During this period of time, no one has enough to eat. No matter how high young Master Mu's cultivation is, you're still immortal. If you don't eat, you'll starve. If you don't eat, where do you get the strength? I'm really guilty. This time, I'm just going down the mountain to talk to my father. You don't have to follow me." Mu Jinghu frowned and thought for a moment. "That's not good. I promised Fox to protect you. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Besides, I eat better than you. You're a little girl, and you're fine. I'm a martial artist who cultivates both internal and external energy. How can I be weaker than you? Or are you worried that I'll eavesdrop if I follow you? Then I'll hide in the dark. If you don't want me to come out, I won't come out. Is that okay?" "Young Master Mu, what are you saying? Why would I be worried about eavesdropping? I'm just worried that you'll be tired." "Forget it. Since that's the case, young Master Mu can hide in the dark. If there's anything, you can also secretly listen to my signal." "Okay." Mu Jinghu nodded and smiled. "Then you guys can go." Qin Yining knew that Mu Jinghu would naturally have his own way to keep up with him. Thus, he held hands with Bing Tang and Ji Yun and walked down empty Qinshan along the winding path while carrying a lantern. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they saw a horse carriage parked on the road not far away. The wind lantern on the horse carriage swayed in the night wind. The air was filled with the moist fragrance of grass after the rain, making Qin Yining feel better. The three of them walked quickly towards the horse carriage. The people standing in front of the horse carriage also came forward to welcome them. Chapter 276. Greetings to fourth young mistress. The person who walked over with a lamp in his hand was Chi Tai. Qin Yining smiled and said, "Is my father in the carriage? Bring me there quickly." Chi Tai smiled and said, replying to young mistress, "When this little one received the order to come out, the Marquis had not yet left the palace. The Marquis asked this little one to bring young mistress to the residence that the Emperor had bestowed upon the Marquis. Based on our journey, the Marquis would be almost there. The Marquis had also prepared some dry rations for you. They are mixed flour pancakes from the army. He said that you should bring them to old Madam and the rest when you return." Qin Yining was a little hesitant, but he still nodded. "All right, then let's set off quickly." Firstly, Chi Tai was her father's follower for more than 20 years. He was trustworthy. Secondly, she had Ji Yun and Bing Tang by her side. Mu Jinghu was also secretly following her. There was no need to be afraid of any trouble. Qin Yining, Ji Yun, and Bing Tang boarded the carriage. Chi Tai naturally sat outside the carriage with the coachman. The wind lantern swayed in the night. The carriage drove from the bumpy road to the flat and spacious road, heading all the way to the outer city. Now that the city was in chaos, the curfew was completely in vain. There was no one patrolling the city, and only the inner city gate was guarded. However, when they flashed the Qin Huaiyuan sign, these people respectfully let them pass. The road to the outer city was much more difficult to travel than the inner city. This was because there were many refugees who had fled from the disaster in the outer city. The starving commoners were bitten by mosquitoes, and their faces were numb as they huddled in the temporary shelters. They stared blankly as the carriage drove past them. Qin Yining looked at the scene outside the window and felt a wave of pain in his heart. He even began to pray that the emperor would surrender quickly. The faster he surrendered, the sooner the commoners' suffering would end. After a while, the carriage finally arrived in front of a courtyard. Qin Yining helped Ji Yun and Bing Tang out of the carriage and entered a black door. This was a small courtyard. The east and west wing of the courtyard were all dark. Only the main room was lit. Hearing the sound of footsteps, a thin and delicate woman came out to greet them. Chi Tai smiled and said, "This is Sister Zhang. She is responsible for cooking for Marquis, and other people guarding the city." Qin Yining smiled and nodded at Mrs. Zhang. Aunt Zhang hurriedly bowed. After getting up, she said to Chi Tai cautiously, "The noodles you ordered are ready. Then bring it over first, and let fourth young miss have some first. When the Marquis returns, I will cook for the Marquis again." In this day and age, eating porridge was already good enough. To be able to eat a bowl of noodles was truly a luxury. Qin Yining smiled. He thought that his father must have called him out to talk to him so that he could eat his fill. The group of people entered the main room, and Mrs. Zhang retreated. Qin Yining looked around the tidy and monotonous small room, then sat down on the stool beside the square table. He smiled and said, "My father has been living here for the past few days. Why isn't he in the barracks?" Chi Tai smiled and said, "Sometimes he is in the barracks. However, ever since Marquis Anguo was lured out by De Zhou and lost 20,000 people in one go, even Marquis Anguo himself almost lost his life. Marquis Anguo began to avoid fighting. Originally, we had barracks stationed outside the city gates to prevent De Zhou's people from directly attacking the city. However, Marquis Anguo did not allow it, so we dismantled the barracks. In any case, the city gates are closed, so there is no need for the Marquis to live in a tent." "I see. It has been hard on father. In the summer, there are so many mosquitoes and it is very hot. Living in a tent will definitely not be comfortable. It is more reassuring to live in a house." At this time, Mrs. Zhang came in with a large square plate. There were 3 steaming bowls of scallion and egg noodle soup on the square plate. On a slightly cold autumn night after the rain, the 3 bowls of noodles with egg and green scallion floating in the air exuded a burst of white steam and a tempting aroma. Qin Yining could not help but have a stomachache. Recently, she had been hungry often and always ate all kinds of wild vegetables. It was hard to guarantee that it would not hurt her stomach. Now that she saw this bowl of noodles, although she had a good appetite, her stomach was singing a different tune. Chi Tai smiled and placed the noodles in front of Qin Yining. He said respectfully, "Miss, please eat first." This was specially ordered by the Marquis. It was not easy to get these ingredients. The Marquis said to let you nourish your body. Then, Chi Tai smiled and said to Bing Tang and Ji Yun, "The Marquis said that the 2 of you have done a good deed by serving the 4th Mississippi. Each of you should eat a bowl of noodles." Bing Tang and Ji Yun smiled and thanked him. They took the noodles and placed it on the table at the side. Naturally, they could not eat at the same table as Qin Yining. Qin Yining picked up the bamboo chopsticks. Just as she picked up the noodles with her chopsticks, Bing Tang suddenly pinched her arm. Qin Yining looked at Bing Tang in confusion. Bing Tang looked at the noodles and shook his head. His clear eyes looked at Chi Tai, who was standing at the side with his hands hanging down. He smiled mockingly and said, "Was this bowl of noodles really specially prepared by the Marquis for our miss?" Chi Tai was stunned and his expression was a little unnatural. Yes, if it was not for the marquee, this lowly one would not be able to get these noodles for Miss to eat. That's because the person who cooked the noodles was careless and accidentally put the knockout drug into the noodle soup. Our Miss only needs to eat one mouthful of these noodles, and it is enough to make her unconscious for 3 days. Ji Yun heard this and angrily rebuked. "What are you doing?" Mu Jinghu, who was guarding the side room, was so angry that he wanted to rush in. What a wastrel! In a year of famine, it was already good enough to have a biscuit to eat. It was rare to see steaming hot noodles, but someone actually recklessly put a drug in it. This was simply a waste of food. A waste of food. Qin Yining was still sitting on the bench with one hand behind his back. He waved his hand in Mu Jinghu's direction, indicating that he should not move. Mu Jinghu could only grit his teeth and bear with it and not come out. Qin Yining asked with a grave expression, "Chi Tai, did my father really ask you to bring me here today, or did you act on your own accord?" Chi Tai pursed his lips and suddenly revealed a mocking smile. "Fourth Miss, I, Chi Tai, have let down the Marquis and you in this matter. But for the sake of the stability of this country, there is no harm in you sacrificing a little." As soon as he finished speaking, a furious Ji Yun kicked Chi Tai in the stomach. Chi Tai screamed in pain and retreated a few steps before falling to the ground. He hugged his stomach in pain and panted heavily. Ji Yun pulled Qin Yining with one hand and Bing Tang with the other. "Let's go." Qin Yining also knew that there was no time to lose and immediately followed Ji Yun out without hesitation. Who knew that just as they reached the courtyard, they heard the door in front of them being kicked open with a bang and a group of masked men barged in. Qin Yining stopped in his tracks and said with a grave expression, "Who are you?" At this moment, Mu Jinghu was already hiding in the shadows between the side room and the side room behind Qin Yining. Qin Yining also did not know where Mu Jinghu was. He still had his hands behind his back and waved, indicating that Mu Jinghu should not come out. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.